Hi, today we're going to talk about something that some people seem to enjoy, the Sumerians and Mesopotamia, which is Iraq, and also Egypt and the ancient Egyptians. And a lot of people, I think, do see there's similarities. We're going to talk about that, but we're going to show why and what parts are reasonable. Some people have passed, when they were first doing archaeology in Egypt and Sumeria, they believed that basically the Sumerians went over and colonized Egypt because there's so much like influence from Mesopotamia. That's not accurate. And we do know that now with DNA, which we'll talk about. And it's also inaccurate to think that it's only the Middle Easterns, because the people also have this wrong opinion that it's only Middle Easterners, that went over and influenced Egypt. There's absolutely African influence. It's also inaccurate to think of it as only an African culture. That is also inaccurate to think of Egypt in that way. It absolutely has DNA, and there are pharaohs that are multi-racial, is a better way to understand Egypt. That it is not accurate to think they're all outsiders, because there is eDNA, which would be, basically could be considered an DNA. But there's also rDNA, which is European. There's also jDNA, which is Middle East or Cossack Mountains. It also has G, which is Middle East. It also, has DNA that relates to T, which is also Middle East. So, and then some forms of E are back migrations that are, because eDNA went to the Middle East and then into Europe 10,000 years ago, but some of it travels back, especially from Israel area or, Palestine. But also then Egypt's DNA of E then leaves a second time 5,000 years ago back up to the same way into the Balkans again. So it does it twice. The first time, though, the 10,000 one, it actually goes up into Eastern Turkey. So it goes over into Europe, like it splits like a Y in a sense, goes into like Israel and then splits some into Turkey, Eastern Turkey, near northern Iraq, and the other one is the Balkans. The second time, it's mainly just towards the Balkans at 5,000. But I'm just saying, so people need to understand that people have this opinion like that rDNA, which is in Africa, sometimes for the male DNA, sometimes at like not in Israel, in Egypt per se. There are some mummies that have rDNA, R1b, but there's other people in Western Africa or Central Africa that have, or North Africa, so somewhat, it depends on what you're talking about, but that have DNA for eDNA, especially around Chad, that could be 90%. That doesn't mean those people are white people, even though that's a backflow of European, because it's a backflow at 7,000. So people need to understand, even if that DNA was a white person, which I'm not saying that they 100% were, because it depends on, do they have the alleles for that? Okay. Alleles for whiteness got into the Middle East somewhere between 10 and 9,000 years ago. So anything that leaves after that fact, it is possible that they have it, just so people know. So, but people need to understand that in a few generations, just think of this, if everyone that you have, your wives or whatever, are a black female or African female,
okay,
and all your children just keep getting only African females that are black, even if they started with the white gene, you wouldn't pretty much know that thousands of years later. Because I've had people try to say that because the people that generally show up as having this rDNA look almost like regular Africans to them. Yeah, but this is thousands of years. People need to understand that a few generations you can see color change either way when people have mixed children.
Yeah.
So the fact of thousands of years, if you just keep going one way, either way, if you go white, and then you started with someone who's dark, they can lose their children eventually. You wouldn't even know. Same way, if you start with someone who's light, but they have dark, eventually. So this is also important because of eDNA. Einstein is eDNA and Jewish, and considered white, right?
Yeah.
or at least white looking.
Yeah.
So I'm just making a comment that you have to understand that it's more complicated than people try. Because the reason I bring this up is because whenever you talk about Africa or Egypt, people have these either like whites took over or it's a black thing and people are lying. There's a lot of pseudo stuff about Egypt. And it is correct
definitely.
that eventually there were black pharaohs, but they all weren't black. It's also there could have been a white or light skinned pharaoh, but they all weren't that either. Because there was a time when the Hyksos took over, and the Hyksos, were people, and that could be the RDNA, a second version or something, were the people from the steppe who could have came, and been light skinned. The point is, though, you can't really, the people try to sometimes look at like how faces look and say, oh, well, these facial features equal A, B, C, D. This is not a good thing because that's not an accurate way to understand. And the other thing is you can't sometimes look at Egyptian paintings because when the Egyptians painted themselves, it was more propaganda than it was like a literal representation of their actual color. In other words, they often painted women more white looking, no matter what they look like, and they painted the Egyptian men often kind of a reddish color, no matter what their thing. This included even when the people that were black took over. There are portraits that show both the person as black and as red, like the normal Egyptian, even though that person probably was only dark skinned. So I'm just saying because people will have I've seen people have arguments about what the Egyptians were. The best way to understand is multicultural. And also through time, it was constantly changing depending on which thing. Because if you look at all the different pharaohs, they don't all have like the same DNA. There's like a different DNA. The males eat. The females, of course, also, people didn't understand, they would have sometimes multiple wives. They could take a wife that may have been dark skinned, they took a wife that was medium skin, and they could take a wife that was white skin. And to say that, then of course they have children. Then one of them becomes pharaoh. It could be any of that variation.
Yeah.
And people understand too is often, just like later in Europe, kings would tell other kings, let me marry your daughter so we have like a connection. So Egypt would get an influx from other, powers in the area to have children in a sense. So, or, wives. So that could mean, because they're like, just like in Europe, it's not really because of like a sex thing. It's more about building, connections with, powerful countries in a sense. Because women were used, like cattle or something, you trade them like property. It wasn't like, doing it for love or whatever, marriage. So I'm just saying that all of that you have to remember when you're thinking about these places. So
okay. Oh yeah, I'll keep that in mind.
Right. Well, I'm saying also people that are watching, to keep that in mind, that making some of these hard statements about things, wrong. It's
even at least for me, I'd expect it to be multiracial, especially as you go forward in time and trade contacts increase.
Right, but I'm saying that there's probably trade happening from 6,000, and the first pharaoh is 5,100. So there's already stuff happening before people think of even the old kingdom is already different stuff. I'm just saying. But like I said, also you need to understand that it wasn't just that somebody from the outside came and took over. That's not. It's influence. It's like I say about religion. The religions always gave the entire religion. It was like they pushed Christianity or something where you have to take everything, or you have to believe in their pope or something. No, these are the time when people are just sharing ideas and you pick out elements. And so there's elements that are similar, not like a whole package of ideas. So, but it doesn't mean there's no ideas. It's just you got to understand it as like a package of ideas. Anyways, we'll go to the blog.
Sumerians and Ancient Egyptians. Mountains, mounds, and temples. Ziggurats or pyramids with related deities, as well as mythology.
Right on. So we're going to break this up into two videos. So the first one will be kind of to show these connections they have more than directly focusing on the mountains, the mounds and stuff, symbols, the temples. But the second video definitely will be doing more of that. So this first picture is kind of Sumerians, and it's kind of showing like how the Sumerians sort of saw the world with mountains and water. the first land comes out of the water, and the woman with the knife and the holding the fire or whatever, that's the water goddess. And then the later Babylonian like snake looking creature wrapped around her that's supposedly similar to her, not exact, is Tiamat, which is very close to but not 100% connected to that first figure, who is the water before creation and then after. And then these are just different hills or mountains that are personified. And then the thing on this purple mountain, this is a like little temple, and then there's two deities, like a man and a woman in a sense, sort of live in there, is the story. Go ahead and read the stuff on the art itself if you can.
Okay, I'll start with the purple in the center, top center. Harsag/Hersag, mountain, hill, can mean mountain house, temple, cosmic mountain, holy mountain, or world mountain. The peak of the cosmic mountain is not only the highest point on Earth, it is also the Earth's navel, the point where creation had its beginning. The root/axis mundi, and may be identified with a real mountain, or it can be mythic, but it is always placed at the center. Examples abound. The Mesopotamian ziggurat is properly called a cosmic mountain, and are seen as mountains with a deity house.
Correct.
Ersag is a Sumerian term meaning house of the mountains, sometimes etymologized as Eharsag, with the signs E, temple or house, Har, mountain, and Sag, head. Ehersag is commonly associated with a temple of god Enlil. Namu was a Mesopotamian goddess regarded as a creator deity, especially in the early Sumerian city Eridu, mother of An, heaven/sky god, and Ki, earth/mound of creation, as well as the primeval sea/cosmic ocean related to the goddess Tiamat. Duku is holy hill, holy mountain. Idelkug, house, which is the holy mound or great mountain, and where goddess Nungal and the god Anuna, or a group of gods, dwell upon.
Right, and that's that one purple mountain that there two people are in a sense. That's what you were just reading. So this right here shows the cosmologies of different world, in a sense, religion cosmologies, and how they all are doing this similar type of thing. This blue thing around it, that's the cosmic water that was referred to for Namu and for Tiamat.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hebrew Bible has it also. And then what's in between that, sort of holding it up like the sky or whatever, the air bubble in between is considered the firmament. And then the Hindu has a snake, which represents the water like the Tiamat. And then the Mayans have it too, and the Inca kind of have a similar thing. And so the Navajos similar, where they're all flat earths also. And the Norse has the flat earth and then has a tree going through it that's holding up the sky, where the Mesopotamian and the Egypt are using, in a sense, mountains. And that's also sort of what the Bible kind of says it's mountains. But also the tree is on top of the Norse mountain. And then it's hard to tell in that picture, but the rim of the world is also related with a bunch of little mountains. So they thought, and then there's that also, they don't call it the firmament, but they have the bubble of air that the tree is making, which is, so it's all similar. And then in China, they also have it, and then it has a floating flat thing, which is representing of the flat square earth, where a lot of these other ones have a flat earth, but it's round. Theirs is square, so but they still has the firmament air bubble sort of thing. The Greece has, and by the way, a lot of these other ones, the flat earth floats just like this, like a raft or something, just like the Chinese has it floating. That is, similar. It's not really that different. But the Greece, it also has the water and the sort of has a firmament and the floating, island, but it's a round disc. But not, so it's kind of similar to China, but not exactly. What's around it though is they consider fire. They think that there's holes in the firmament or sky, and then what you're seeing, the stars, is the fire behind the sky. A little bit different, but still kind of similar. And then the Babylonian was water around with the flat earth with like a temple, pyramid mound, which is the Mount of Creation sort of also. And then the same with the Mississippian, same thing. They have this dome, sort of firmament. They have a tree. It's kind of like the Norse, and which is like a pole that goes, axis mundi, goes all the way through. So a lot of this really is connected and related. These ideas spread. And so to me, religion is a cultural product. That's what I try to keep showing, and it moved in cultural migration. So the reason this stuff is similar is because it is similar and is sort of related. It's loosely related. It's not like Graham Hancock thinking it all going at one time or all one people. No, it all went at different times, and it went with different DNA and different languages and different people, but it did spread. So go ahead and read about the stuff now.
Mythology of Four Squared. Pyramid / mound, square mountain at the center of the world, and square earth. In the earliest potential related ancestor of the later Sumerian mythology beginning, there was the pre-Sumerian, the Ubaid period, circa 6500 to 3800 BCE, or 8500 to 5800 years ago, is a prehistoric period of Mesopotamia. In southern Mesopotamia, this period marks the earliest known settlements on the alluvial plain, a floodplain landform created by sediment over a long period by rivers, although evidence of earlier habitation may have been obscured under the alluvium. In the south, the Ubaid period spans from about 5500 to 3800 BCE, or 7500 to 5800 years ago, when it is succeeded by the Uruk period. In northern Mesopotamia, the period runs only from about 5300 to 4300 BCE, or 7300 to 6300 years ago.
Right, showing that it was older in the south.
Eridu, established between 5500 to 5300 BCE, or 7500 to 7300 years ago, and abandoned 600 BCE, or 2600 years ago, was a Sumerian city located at Tel Abu Shahrain in Lower Mesopotamia, Iraq.
Right, and just so people know, a tell is like a human-made mound. That's what that word means.
Eridu is traditionally considered the earliest city in southern Mesopotamia, based on the Sumerian king list. The known Sumerian city gods of Eridu were Enki and his consort Damkina. Enki, later known as Ea, was considered to have founded the city. His temple was called Abzu, as Enki was believed to live in Abzu, an aquifer from which all life was thought to stem. Eridu's first platform was created in 4500 4000 BCE, or 6500 to 6000 years ago, in the Ubaid period. The origin of this temple goes back to a prehistoric sequence of buildings. This sequence starts at level 11 in the table below, in the middle Ubaid period. Eridu is universally represented in Sumerian sources, especially in the king lists, as the first city. The sequence of palace-like or temple-like buildings just mentioned seems to substantiate this claim, as it appears to be the first occurrence of such structures in the region, and urban nucleus of Eridu was Enki's temple, called House of the Aquifer in the oldest Sumerian texts. In later texts, the temple was called House of the Waters, and the name refers to Enki's realm. His consort, Ninhursag, had a nearby temple at Ubaid. Enki, also known as Ea, was a Mesopotamian god of wisdom, crafts, fresh subterranean waters, magic, and incantations. In Mesopotamian astronomy, he is associated with the stars of the southern band of the sky. He was believed to rule the Abzu, which means Ab equals water, plus Zu equals deep, and is the name for fresh water from underground aquifers, which was given a religious fertilizing quality in ancient Near Eastern cosmology, including Sumerian and Akkadian mythology. It was believed that all lakes, springs, rivers, fountains, rain, and even the flood, Abzu in Mesopotamian cosmogony, is referred to as the freshwater primordial ocean below and above the earth. Indeed, the earth itself was regarded as a goddess, Ninhursag, that was conceived from the mating of male Abzu with female saltwater stream Tiamat.
Right, and Ninhursag also relates to, as Hursag is a mountain, so it relates also to, like, in a sense, going back to, like I've said before, about the out of the primordial ocean, like is in the Earth Diver myths, they build a mound or whatever, and it grows into the world, the flat earth. Well, the Ninhursag is the mountain, in a sense, there's talking about, that's created out of the water, which is also what the Egyptians have, the mound of creation that comes out of the water.
Ninhursag means Lady of the Sacred Mount, from Sumerian Nin, lady, and Harsag, sacred mountain, foothill, possibly a reference to the site of her temple, the Ikur, House of Mountain Deeps, at Eridu. Ninhursag was an ancient Sumerian mother goddess of the mountains, and one of the 7 great deities of Sumer. She is known earliest as a nurturing or fertility goddess. She is the tutelary deity to several Sumerian leaders.
Do you remember what a tutelary deity is?
You can jog my memory.
So a tutelary deity is a specific type of a deity. Mm-hmm. Like if you go look up on Wikipedia, which we should probably just do that, but because it helps it's important kind of a deity to understand. So a tutelary deity. Now, often often when they talk about it, Sierra says in late Greek and Roman, this is nonsense. This thing is like 6,000 years old minimum. So for them to think that it only relates to that, maybe that word Tulier, but the concept of this type of a thing is way beyond just Greek and Roman. So a Tulier deity is a deity or a spirit who is a guardian. Like if you have a guardian angel, or it can be the god of Israel. Well, Israel is a group of people or an area, right? So the deity that cares about them would be their Tulier deity. See, it's a patron or it's a protector of a particular place, geographic feature, a person, a lineage, a nation, a culture, or an occupation. So if you have a deity of, say, goldsmithing or whatever, that would be a Tulier deity of that thing. It's a deity there. It's like positive for you in a sense.
So it's like a guardian.
Yeah, it's a helper.
Yeah.
It's not considered to be. So I'm saying it's a certain kind, more about caring about protecting you, supposedly.
The creator goddess Namu, associated with water, as well as a representation of the primeval sea/ocean from the Old Babylonian period onwards, she was considered to be the mother of On, heaven, and Ki, earth, who were joined as a mountain form, a cosmic and physical symbol of marriage, before being separated.
Right. So you understand is when that first happened, when they're born, they're the heaven and earth, or think of yin and yang as being a mountain where they're actually heaven and earth are the same being, but it's a dualistic being. It is both heaven and earth, both male and female. You see what I'm saying? And one can be heaven like as in light and female like as in darky, like the yin and yang, but yet be one hill, which I know people don't always understand. So then the concept in their thing is to separate is they're super close together. And then like in the Mesopotamian, and other ones besides that, they're in a sense air or something, is because the god of air blows the firmament is made, the air bubble, which separates heaven and earth. And then because of that separation, they actually become two separate deities, where before, in a sense, they're one dual.
Was regarded as the mother of Enki in the tradition of Eridu, and in a single inscription she appears as of Anu, but it is assumed that she usually was not believed to have a spouse.
Right. So in the Mesopotamian faith, that was the original thing. Like I just did a video yesterday about the primordial waters and how darkness and water are like the primordial substance pre-creation. So it's already there. And it even in the Bible, it talks about this where it says the Spirit of the Lord, floats over the water of the deep, meaning there is no land. It's just all water, which this concept really is from probably Sumeria at least.
Sumerian literature mentions the separation of heaven and earth event most frequently than any other. The separation of heaven and earth is a cross-cultural creation myth event. The separation serves the role of differentiating the chaotic, undifferentiated cosmos, sometimes interpreted as a universal cosmic ocean, into coherent and organized parts. The mechanics...
Right, so pause 1 second. So like I was saying also, the parts are light is removed from darkness, male is removed from female. You see that? The land is removed from the water. It's like all these dualities in a sense.
Okay, yeah. So you have like this original, like singular thing that something comes along and separates the two.
Right, and like also even in the cosmic water, like in Egypt, there's a version where it says it's not the being like Autumn. It says Autumn wasn't like totally created from nothing. He exists in the water as an inert, in other words, not activated, an inert potential being. So he's already existing from the beginning of creation in the water, but not yet a deity. But the substance is not wholly new in a sense. Because just like this, he's part of. It's chaos. Chaos to them is darkness and night and not the light, and not, to be not male and female distinctly, to not be, land distinct from the water. This is chaos.
The separation serves the role of differentiating the chaotic, undifferentiated cosmos, sometimes interpreted as a universal cosmic ocean, into coherent and organized parts. The mechanics and cause differ from one story to another, but is usually either a spontaneous process or a result of the agency of a deity. In ancient Near Eastern texts, the original mass that is separated is a solid in older Sumerian literature, but becomes a water in younger Akkadian literature, such as the Enuma Elish, an idea that begins to be seen not only in Sumerian, but also in Akkadian, Phoenician, Egyptian, and Greek mythologies. The
Right, so like I
separation...
was saying, pause 1 second. Like I was saying, that's a lot of different cultures, right?
Oh yeah, that's a whole different bunch. Yeah, and not only that, it's changing through time.
It's changing, right?
Yeah.
And that's also to understand. It's changing, yes. Just like I said, even the names of the deities change, but also some of their features. Because at the beginning feature, it's Namu, who's the sort of the cosmic ocean, which is sort of also relates to cosmic mountains. And then later it becomes more about oceans, and then it turns into that Tiamat, who is that some people show as a snake or a dragon or whatever, which the beginning one is not. So it's changing. And even like the Egyptian, right? It says Egyptian here. It says Nut and Geb. Well, they're not all Nut and Geb, just so we know, because Nu, which is in, which I'll go to just so you understand, because it helps understand that, like, because you brought up changing, and I want people to understand. Yes, changing. Changing is an important thing you need to get. That's what I was saying too about like what race they are or whatever. Yeah, it's constantly evolving, changing, whatever. It's not. So when people like to say, well, they were all this or all that. Yeah, what time? How long? What are you talking about exactly? So this is new because the other story is that Nut, which is the sky female and can be almost considered like the water where all the stars and the Milky Way and stuff, mates with the male land. But in this version, it's a male god who's a dual gender. This deity, if you look at the picture, it shows a beard, but if you also look at the picture, it shows a breast.
Oh yeah, it does.
Yeah, it shows a breast. And this deity has two names, Nun and Nut. So the one is the inert one, which is the male, and then the Nu is water, the watery one. But it's both that same person. And it says here, Nun was one of the 8 deities. Yeah, because they weren't only at one city did it have this belief. So they all have the different cities, just like in Sumeria, they had different deities and sort of things, depending on what city. People sometimes group all of Egypt as one whole thing when that's not true. Sometimes it's Ra, sometimes it's Atum. And both of those are correct depending on which city you're talking about. So it can be confusing because it says that the primordial mound arose out of this, which is the Benben stone, which is the pyramid-shaped mound, which also changed through time. It starts as a mound and turns into a pyramid, and then it actually represents an actual pyramid. So it constantly is changing. So it says here the name, right? See, it's different. It means water abyss and stuff, but sometimes this is considered to be a male and sometimes a female, depending on how its words used. And if you look down here, it says in Heteropolis, it was related to the deity Atum, it closely associated with Ra, when the other one is about Ra. So like you were saying about things changing, so you got to understand that it's not one myth that explains.
It's not static.
Yeah, it's not one myth.
Yeah.
Well, even like, so it's here it says that some version, the myth, the beginning of time was the deity Methep Wurit, which can be portrayed as a cow, which also relates to, if you go on and click on that, right? That's a cow. Well, that's also relates to Bat, which also relates to Hathor later. See what I'm saying? So, and this deity was name meant, the Great Flood. Which would be the cosmic ocean. But remember, the cosmic ocean is also this deity that's a male but sometimes female, the trans, or dual or non-binary deity. In Egyptian, right? It also, there's Egyptian stories like we are reading. There's Egyptian stories that said that the deity is Nut, which, so you see what I'm saying? So like you're saying about it changing, yes. Absolutely. And it makes it confusing because these different deities are all sort of doing different things and sort of similar things at the same time.
Yeah, that's just what I was thinking about, especially with the water. Like they can be referring to very similar concepts, but
well, they are definitely referring to similar, but there is
Yeah.
difference, and they are changing, and they change out one deity for another one, and then changes to another one. So yeah, it can make it confusing. Like I think they have 10 or something, or 8, I can't remember how many, but different cow deities that all sort of sound like Hathor or whatever, but they're not the same deity. They keep changing, just like I was saying. The concept of water stays kind of the same. The deities, as you said, change. Like I said, the one deity it says is a female, the sky. The other one, it says that, oh no, it's this sort of non-binary male deity who's also a female sometimes. that she mated, or she mated with the male god Geb, the land. That is also the Ben stone, and also the mound of creation, and also pyramids, in a sense. You're like, yeah, I'm totally not confused.
Well, no, for somebody who spends most of their time researching like hunter-gatherers and the like northern hunter-gatherer and North American archaeology, it's a lot to take in. Because the last time I researched Egyptian and Middle Eastern mythology related to this stuff was a while ago, back in university.
Right.
Yeah, so it's been a while.
Right, and also I understand it and how it jumps back and forth, and it's kind of all still related, even though it's sort of different. Which I know. So don't feel like, if you feel lost, that's okay, because it is kind of confusing at first how all this is kind of similar but not. But you made a good point. That's why I went off a little tangent addressing it, because yes, you are right. This changes. So when people try to tell you Egypt is, you need to know, well, even Sumerians or whatever, Mesopotamia, there wasn't this fixed thing. They were changing the stuff. They keep the similar, but that's why I told you before, I try to teach the mythi, which is like the core elements, not caring about the names and the things so much, but it's all water. It's like the cow, right? There's all these different cows, but really they're all sort of the same thing, because they're all about water. They're all about the sky. They're all about the sun, the moon, or whatever. They're all about the eye of Ra or the eye of Horus, or, which the eye of Ra is the sun, the eye of Horus is the moon. But originally the eyes as a dual thing of Horus were the sun and the moon. And then Ra becomes one of the eyes, but that eye itself, even though a male deity has it, is actually a female deity when the eye leaves the male deity. Once again, like the water god Nu is a male and female duality. So, yeah, which is the same thing I was trying to say, that heaven and earth are a duality, male and female spirit. Just it should help you understand is that people think that people that are LBGT or non-binary is some new thing. This stuff is thousands of years old.
Oh, yeah.
Not new.
No, incredibly ancient.
Right. Well, and I feel that the really truth is that people have always kind of felt this way. And so the fact that it was put into, before there was these rigid religions, put into religious ideas and cultural ideas, because it wasn't any idea to not do it. It wasn't seen as abnormal. It was just who people were.
The separation myth is a familiar motif in the religious literature of Egypt, exemplified by its classic formulation that Shu separates the sky, Nut, from earth, Geb, appearing in many texts. The separation myth appears in Hindu cosmology, Proto-Indo-European mythology related, including in the Rig Veda, one of the 4 canonical texts of the Hindu scripture of the Vedas. In ancient Iranian and Zoroastrian mythology, Proto-Indo-European mythology related, the separation of heaven and earth is attributed directly to the supreme creator, Ahura Mazda. Rather than an act of physical tearing, the myth emphasizes a spiritual manifestation and an ongoing cosmic struggle to maintain the universe against the forces of chaos and darkness.
See, now darkness, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because order, as I already said, is light. Order would be to be single gendered almost. almost, right? The dual gendered is the chaotic state. It also relates to when in Africa, the concept of circumcision for male and female. They think that the circumcision of the man's foreskin is removing the female nature, then you become a full man. The same thing with cutting off the clitoris is considered to cut off the penis of the female and thus making her a full female.
Oh.
I mean, I don't agree with this, but I'm just explaining this is the concept religiously that helps you also understand what they're talking about.
No, that's a very interesting way for them to look at it and like approach that subject. Like, that's really interesting. Like not being considered like a full man or a full woman until you go through that surgery.
Correct.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
A possible reconstructed interpretation in Proto-Indo-European (PIE) mythology that could involve the separation of heaven and earth, which evolved from a primordial union of personified cosmic opposites. The Sky Father, Dreas Fater, and the Earth Mother, Dagon. The universe was thought to have begun with the close embrace of the Sky Father and Earth Mother.
Right. So just so you know, we're not going to go look at it, but the Sky Father is about the light and the sun or the blue sky, and the Earth Mother, they call her the dark earth. And so once you understand that, because some people are like, oh, does that mean that she's originally was black? It's like, no, it's nighttime and daytime. It's going back to all these other mythologies of the duality that they're talking about when these things separating, the light and the dark, the sky and the earth, when they separate, then they become these individual beings. I know, like I said, if you're not used to this, to understand this, it can be confusing, but I'm trying to help.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm piecing it together bit by bit as we go along. Yeah, it's a lot to take in, all these different concepts.
Yeah, like if you watch the video I did yesterday, it would help because I explained how pre-creation, which really relates to a lot of this, but before that, the myths start, like why all this is happening.
The universe was thought to have begun with the close embrace of the Sky Father and Earth Mother. Before their separation, the cosmos was undifferentiated, often described in subsequent traditions as a dark, chaotic expanse where the sky and ground rested directly against one another.
Right, which sounds like the Sumerian and the Egyptian and the Hindu and the Iranian and the Phoenician and the Greek. Oh, wait a minute. China too. Oh, the Americas. Oh, wait a minute. Polynesia. Wait a minute. Australia does it too? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Africa does it? Oh, okay. Wait a minute now. It's almost as if all this is sort of connected. Like I said, a religion is a cultural product and moved the ideas in a cultural migration.
See, I might be wrong, but I don't think Graham Hancock or his like other buddies have ever like talked about like this.
Well, because they're fools. Because like I said, I explained how it actually is doing it and why it's reasonable to grasp that it is doing it. I'm not wrongly assuming this, where they just look at things and go, to me, it looks like this, so I think it must be this. Well, that's not why I think that. I think they're connected. I didn't know they were connected. I didn't start 30 years ago like Graham with thinking they're connected. 30 years ago, or I don't know if it's 30 years, but when I started to stop being a Christian, I became an atheist in 2006. In 2006, I started to wanting to understand. I did not understand. I barely understood Christianity. I had read the Bible twice, unlike some Christians. So I kind of understood the Bible some, but I really didn't understand anything else. Other religions, never read or heard any other thing about any religion, didn't want to. So I was completely ignorant. I didn't start with, I have this theory and 30 years later, I'm still trying to prove it, but I have no evidence like him. No, what I did was I thought, I don't know, but I really first looked like in the Paleolithic stuff, it looks like all these female figures and people are saying mother goddess. So I first actually started thinking maybe it's mother goddesses. Now I know that's wrong, but at the time, I'm just showing you that my ideas changed. As soon as I got more
thinking's changing.
I was like, oh, wait a minute. No, that's wrong. And then even up to I don't know how many years now, but 2-3 years or something, or maybe, I don't know exactly. I had a total change understanding paganism and deities better. I had figured out the place in Turkey or in northern Mesopotamia, Middle East or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's where, in Israel, the Fertile Crescent, Northern Fertile Crescent for sure. That's where paganism started. I'm real sure, but I'm still correct. But I had incorrectly thought that the first thing they built was totem poles that weren't deities. And then at 10,000, it looks like female deities start. And then in the Balkans, I thought the 7,000 to 8,000 male deities start. And I thought it related to war, why they started, and that females, but now I know that's not right. I also thought agriculture's what started deities. Now I know that's not right. It started because of herding. And then when agriculture came, male herding deities got kind of took over by the female farming deities. But then warrior deities kind of come and take over them. And so it's like this back and forth thing, which is way more complicated than I first thought. So unlike Graham, my ideas keep changing because of evidence. But yes, once you've only started, once you really start learning some of the stuff that I explained, you will grasp that this is almost as the only thing that it could be is what I'm explaining. That this stuff is too similar to have been accident all over the world separately. But it's completely wrong. I'm not in any way supporting Graham's soup or hyperdiffusion. Not that.
No, I don't support that either.
Says, man, it almost sounds like you're doing hyperdiffusion. I said, no, because it's multiple people, multiple times. And the ideas keep changing and keep evolving. And but they are carrying I think the Earth Diver stuff is about 30,000 years old. Earth Diver is what this is talking about. Earth Diver starts with the world is a big ocean, no land. And then deities build the land, which is a mound of creation, which is what the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians and, these other people are all kind of talking, even the Bible, they're all kind of talking about. So that's also why they build temples and build mounds and mound cultures and, shell mounds and all this stuff. There is a connected, but it's loose. It's not definitely not one culture. We're not teaching everybody. That's absolutely asinine and totally incorrect. And just like I was saying, you are correct about changing. They do change over time. So it wasn't even the areas where I know that for sure it didn't stay the same. And even the direct areas that we know, like Egypt and Mesopotamia, that it absolutely went, even then it's different. And even in Egypt, so even if you just, or even in Samaria, even if you just do Egypt, it doesn't stay the same. I just showed you that the deity Nut and the deity Geb, but also another time it was the deity Nu, which is a male non-binary person with a male land, but also sometimes it was a cow, which was a female, and also not always the same cow. So I'm just saying. But like I told you, what I want to do, my way of doing it is a structural way. It's a type of thing. It's a structuralism. A structuralism is a way of looking at mythology and seeing its deeper structure. You're not focusing on the names changing. We're figuring out, okay, what are the attributes that are not changing? And those are the mythemes. What are
the core ideas?
Right. The core ideas. Just you hear it's heaven and earth, right? They're male and female. Sometimes they switch and they make it heaven and heaven, or sometimes it's earth and earth, or sometimes it's a male heaven and a female earth, or a female heaven and a male earth, but it's still the same freaking thing. And sometimes it's one being that has a male and female nature, but often that is also connected to separation of where that starts that way and then it separates. And sometimes it's even like the twins, it's two boys, but sometimes those two boys, one of them is a binary person who is both male and female, and the other one is a manly man. So it's still this similar thing. But once you grasp the mythemes, then you really, unlike Graham, you really start to see the truth of how things are connected and how they are really sharing these similar stories. And that's, but as you know, my thing is not actually to you to now believe in pyramids or to believe in all this mythology. My thing is, the goal is you'll start to see the humanness of all these stories. How can I be an agnostic when I can literally explain to you why they think all over the world, because people go, well, what about this one religion? I'm like, they're not different. Sorry. Want me to show you how they're not different? So they go, well, what if a God? No. gods and religion and all supernatural is a cultural product. Let me show you. So that my goal is that you understand, in a sense, it's all the same. But like I told you too before, being an anarchist, I also have the second, that it's not just an atheist goal, which I do hope you become an atheist, but it's also an anarchist goal that we stop being ethnocentric. That religion is not really that different from your religion. That religion you think is primitive, yours started that way too. You actually share a lot more than you think. You know what I'm saying? And so this arrogancy. So if you're gonna stay religion, right? So if you, that's my going back to being anarchist. If you stay a non-atheist, you at least have to say that either everybody in the world knows some inherent truth, right? We all just explain it different, or it's all fake in culture. So you only have, to me, two choices. A, it's some inherent truth that we somehow all know, we just explain it different, because there's too many things that are the same. And believe me, once we do some more videos in the mythology and you get more aware of it, you're going to be like, oh my God, this stuff is all the same. But my point is that you can't keep the bigotry. And also, I feel like we need to understand that people don't choose to be theists. They think they do. But the cultural impact is so great that a lot of people don't have that. I was 35 before I became an atheist. Well, I didn't wasn't from birth. Some people, get it way, you got it way earlier than me. And I have certainly become a stronger atheist and completely zero agnostic once I learned all this stuff, which I'm trying to teach. Once you learn this, you start to go, man, they're just all sort of saying the same stuff. Yeah, because all these people are impacted and sharing similar stuff. I mean, it is that simple. Why do the Norse and the Native Americans have a tree? 6,000 years ago to 5,000 years ago, the idea of tree was up in eastern Siberia. Those people went over to the Americas. They also went over to Finland and over to the areas that interacted with the early Germans. Why Germans then were the Nordics before Germans, in a sense. And then so the Nordic Bronze Age, which they affected, gets these ideas of trees. The same ideas that actually came from eastern Siberia. And so and the drum shows up about 5,000 years ago. The first drum we're 100% know is from China. 8,000 years ago, alligator skin drum. Not saying their drums aren't possibly older, they could be, but we know for sure that the kind of drum that Germany shows up with at 5,000, 4,500 are pottery drums that are related to China, both through DNA and from pottery styles. So it's not a guess that this is a cultural product. It's a fact.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that it took other ideas with it besides just that pottery and the DNA, and it's not really a shocker.
And see, and at least with my background in psychology from university, this is why I find this stuff so interesting. Just seeing all the ways that culture can vary, but at the same time be so strikingly similar.
Oh yes,
I find that stuff incredibly fascinating.
Right, but what I'm trying to show, though, I have my background in psychology. Also, I have a psychology bachelor's, and but I want you to understand this is not like Richard Dawkins thinks, where it's the best idea won. No. It's the idea that was pushed by the religion that won, and those ideas were shared. Lots of them, not one, lots. That's why I have that whole 20 video thing about all the mythology, because there's lots of ideas that are similar. Not one, it's not a one-off, it's not just pyramids. It's so many ideas, you start to go, okay, this is not an accident. This couldn't have possibly happened just by spontaneous whatever. But so it's not Dawkins' idea that's why that the best meme wins. No, I don't agree with that. It's also not Carl Jung that there's some universal desire for, separation of the earth and the sky. Come on. And then it all separates from air. Yeah, it's miraculously. It has different genders and then also bi-genders and no. And the world all started in water. Yeah, because there's no unit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's not Graham Hancock and it's not hyperdiffusion. It's not Richard Dawkins' meme theory. It's not Carl, Jung's sort of universal, thinking mind or whatever concept we have. What it is more simple than that. It's just culture. It's no different than how languages pass. People spread them. That's how they pass. If you're born into a certain language, that's your language.
Mhm.
If you move to another country, believe it or not, you take that language with you. It is zero difference if you're born into a specific religious group's idea. When you move, believe it or not, you bring that religion with you. When you go there, often you interact with other people that might pick up your language, that might pick up your culture or your religion as well. Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, all these have shown this to be true. The Silk Road, pushed Buddhism and pushed some Hindu ideas and pushed some Chinese ideas. So it's culture. Like I said, so that's why I feel like everyone wants to make it more, it's not the atheists that people think that just people had fear, so they all looked at nature and got afraid and somehow come up with some similar idea either. No, it's just culture. Now, some of the ideas could be related to natural events. Like I think the thing of darkness in my video I explain how they did an ethnographic study and 60 hunter-gatherer cultures around the world all say during the day it's like normal stuff, stories. During the night, it's about imagination. It's about supernatural. It's about religion. And then during the night is when they also do more singing, more dancing, and more stuff around firelight in a religious context. And that would match with the fact that most religions' creation stories start with darkness. And often the darkness has water. If it doesn't have water, often it has a mist, which is the potential for water. Like when I said that the Egyptians have where the potential for the deity is already existing in the water, but not as a deity. So it's this similar stuff. Anyway.
The separation event is also found in Hittite texts. Found pre-Islamic inscriptions suggest this belief in the separation myth was inherited from older Arabian religions that are more closely related to ancient Near Eastern creation myths. In the Quran, the canonical scripture of Islam that comes from the Arabian Peninsula, the separation myth is mentioned as a belief that is held in common between itself and in its existing religious environment. In Chinese mythology and in Taoism, heaven and earth are separated. In earlier sources, this is a process that happens spontaneously. Later sources, after a primordial being named Pangu, had been transformed into a great deity and the creator of heaven and earth, relate the separation of the two to Pangu.
Right, so pause for a second. So as you said about changing, you see how China starts with the mythology. But the first mythology is they're connected and they just by themselves separate. And then the later, as it changes, if a being creates them and then they're connected, and then the being has to separate. So when it says create heaven and earth, it means heaven, it should say heaven and earth as one being or one connected reality, and then is separated into two separate heaven beings or realities, heaven and earth. Which is all the same as all the other stuff. It's like it's not different. And why it's important is because that helps you understand how the earth becomes the mountain and the mound, and then separated from the water, which is what the Benben or the mound of creation for Egypt is, that later becomes what they build pyramids for.
In earlier sources, Pangu is originally inside of earth and heaven. The separation myth occurs among the natives of both the North and South Americas.
Oh, wait a minute, them too?
Oh, how about that? We don't only find it in the Middle East or West Asia. We find it in Asia. We find it in Oceania, and we find it in the Americas.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? It's almost like I'm correct.
In Oceania, especially Polynesia, as well as in Indonesia, a myth appears that begins with a primordial sexual union between heaven, Rangi, and earth, Papa, and then describes their separation. In the creation, according to the Maori, Rangi and Papa, or heaven and earth, were the source.
And the Maori, by the way, are New Zealand, so people know. Indigenous people of New Zealand.
In the creation, according to the Maori, Rangi and Papa, or heaven and earth, were the source from which in the beginning all things originated. The sky god, An/Anu, is named as the father of Enki in multiple sources, including including the myth Enki and the World Order, and Enuma Elish. Enki was first worshipped in Sumer. The earliest sources associate him with the city of Eridu, which was his main cult center and regarded as his home. His temple there was the Abzu. He was already
Abzu is the fresh water of the primordial ocean.
He was already a major deity at the time of the earliest written sources, and the influence of his cult spread outside of southern Mesopotamia early on. It is uncertain when Enki was fully assimilated to Ea, a god whose name is of unknown, possibly Semitic origin. They were already syncretized with each other in parts of Babylonia in the second half of the 3rd millennium BCE. In the myth Enki and Ninhursag instead appears as Enki's consort. In this context, she was syncretized with Damgal Nuna. Enki/Ea's spouse was Damgal Nuna, also known as Damkina. She was believed to act as an intermediary between her husband and supplicants. The origin of Eridu was Enki's temple, goes back to a prehistoric sequence of buildings that starts 4500 to 4000 BCE or 6500 to 6000 years ago in the Middle Ubaid period, and large buildings implying centralized government started to be made.
Right,
Eridu
so
temple.
the idea of government is starts pretty early.
Oh yeah, pretty ancient. Eridu Temple, final Ubaid period. Eridu is one of the earliest settlements in the region, and the city seems to have been founded on a virgin sand dune site with no previous habitation. 18 superimposed mud brick temples underlie the unfinished ziggurat of Amar Sin, circa 2074 through 2039 BCE.
Right, so they're saying this unfinished ziggurat, which is like a pyramid temple sort of, it's 4,000 or something years old. 18 pre-existing temples that were mud brick were under it. So a few.
Yeah.
But especially when you understand that it starts about 6,000 years ago, they had 2,000 years to make those 18 temples.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, there's a lot of time
Yeah,
to do that.
oh yeah, 2,000 years. That's a long time. That's a long time. That's plenty of time to make 18 temples.
Right?
That's like more than enough time. During the Ubaid period, the site extended out to an area of about 18 hectares, about 30 acres. 12 Neolithic clay tokens, the precursor to proto-cuneiform, were found in the Ubaid levels of the site. Significant habitation was found from the Uruk period, 4000/3900 to 3300/3100 BCE, also known as Proto-Literate period, with non-secular buildings being found in soundings. Uruk finds
And so what sounding means when archaeology does like a thing where they try to figure out what's below something without digging it up.
Yeah, like
and
you could
when
use
they
ground
mean by
penetrating
non-secular, they
radar.
mean like religious temples. They're
Uruk finds include decorative terracotta cones topped with copper nails topped with gold, a pair of basalt stone lion statues, columns several meters in diameter coated with cones and gypsum, and extensive Uruk period pottery. Relative Ubaid chronology. Ubaid 1, Uili phase, northern Mesopotamia, early pottery Neolithic, 6500 through 5900/6800 through 6200 BCE.
right. So what these two things are showing, the one is showing southern Mesopotamia, which is the Sumerians, and then also in the brackets it's showing you what's happening in northern Mesopotamia. The reason that's important, at a certain point, the southern is influencing the north.
Ubaid 1, Eridu style, northern Halaf, 5900 through 5200/6200 through 5500 BCE. Ubaid 2, Haji Muhammad style, northern Halaf Ubaid transitional.
Right. So the transitional saying that now at that time frame, they're starting to do stuff like the Sumerians.
5200 through 5100/5500 through 5200 BCE. Ubaid 3, Tel Al Ubaid style, northern Ubaid, 5100 through 4900/5200 through 4600 BCE.
Right. So what's important to understand is by 7,000, at least a little earlier, that they're already north and south areas are related to the similar culture. So when people think, well, Sumerians hadn't started until after 5,000 or whatever, oh no, it's way before that. The influence is already seen in the pottery, at least, which we know that, like I was saying before, people just don't do one thing. They're having, more influence. Ideas are spreading.
Ubaid 4, late Ubaid, northern Ubaid, 4900 through 4350/5200 through 4600 BCE. Ubaid 5, terminal Ubaid, northern late Chalcolithic 1, 4350 through 4200/4600 through 4200 BCE.
Right, so that shows the north now is starting starting to do something different because they're probably having influence from the Cossack Mountains and maybe Turkey or the influences are starting to become more varied. So there's a certain point though where they're literally almost doing the same thing.
Stamp seals had been in use in Upper Mesopotamia since the 7th millennium BCE, or 9,000 to 8,000 years ago. Stamp seals with religious motifs first emerged in Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq and Syria, during the 6th millennium BCE, the Ubaid and Halaf periods, or 8,000 to 7,000 years ago.
See, pause for a second. So this reminds me when people tell me, Damien, when the first writing happened of cuneiform, it wasn't religion, it was only for agriculture, or for tallying, for, storehouses or elite, and governmental things. And I'm like, yeah, but that wasn't. So they try to think like religion isn't older or something, like somehow religion was invented after a certain point. But when does this say? How 8,000 to 7,000, they already know that they're having religious symbolism in these impression things. So yeah, maybe they don't have the written language yet, but that doesn't mean they're not sharing these religious ideas yet. That's what I'm trying to help you understand. Like, because the point is, how old is this Mesopotamian religion? Mesopotamian religion is older than the Sumerians. It wasn't waiting for them to come around before it started.
By the time of the Ubaid period, a wide range of motifs had developed, including geometric patterns and depictions of animals and occasionally humans. The Ubaid period saw the first depictions of ibex-headed and bird-headed humans.
See, now pause for a second there. Generally, when they see that as people that are religious. When they do this mixing, or it shows just like a werewolf or a were-jaguar in the Americas, this is relating, could be to shape-shifting, which is a religious concept. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. By late 5th millennium BCE, or sometime after 6,500 to 6,300 years ago, scenes of human processions and rituals regularly appeared, although the majority of motifs were animals, including lion-animal combats.
Right. So we're still not even at language yet, and they're already having religious rituals and processions. Do you see what I'm saying? You can't just assume that the first writing was the only time that religion started. No, there's literally evident before that.
The majority of Ubaid figurines represented various animals, including sheep, cattle, and dogs. Human figurines were already present in previous periods. The majority of the human figures are female, but male and figurines without gender emphasis exist as well. Those from the early Ubaid reflect a continuation of earlier traditions. A single
right. So when it says figurines without gender emphasis, sometimes that could be because they're a non-binary being or a dual gender.
A single painted figurine from the Ubaid 0 levels at Tel El Oeli has been interpreted as an early representation of the so-called Ophidian figures, which became common in the later Ubaid. Both seating and standing figurines were made, with paint being used to detail body parts, clothing, or body modifications.
Right, and see, to me, when they're standing, I feel that from the stuff I've looked at, that with standing generally probably relates to sky deities, and the sitting relates to earth deities.
Oh, okay.
Or has more of a pronunciation to that being the case. It also relates to authority because people that can sit on a chair or something generally is an authority figure or religious figure.
Ophidian figures have been exclusively found at various southern Mesopotamian sites. They are characterized by a slender body, long reptilian head with incised eyes and mouth, and a three-dimensional small nose. This particular rendering of the face may be a representation of a mask or possible head shaping. The hands are placed before the abdomen, sometimes with incised fingers. The figurines are thought to be naked. Paint is sometimes used to indicate hair or other details. In the earlier Ubaid, Ophidian figures were only used in domestic contexts, whereas in Ubaid 3 to 4, they appear in graves as well, indicating a shift in how these figures were used. The rarity of Ophidian figures as
so pause for 1 second. So you talked about them being naked. So a lot of times people just assume that the only things naked were females and it only relates to fertility. And so I'm showing you here stuff that's from 6,000 and they are in Egypt and in Mesopotamia or Samaria. And these are only men because I wanted to not be female because people think that means, fertility. The top is religious and the bottom is war shaming. So you can get the idea there's two main things. Well, one is elite status. So there's like three things really. So elites wore clothes and workers and stuff sometimes did not. That just meant you were not a high status. But the ones on top are semi-high status people, but they're in religious context. And you are sacred to be naked. So it's a sacred nakedness, like religious related nakedness. Then the bottom is shame related nakedness. So just to understand that it's not, when people think that always when you see something naked, it has to be the same thing. No, there's religious nakedness. There's you're not a high status nakedness. And then there's shame nakedness. These are not the same things. And they're old. You see 6,000 years. This is not, some new thing. Because I think it's, because like I said, nakedness, people always assume primitive. And so I want to show these are non-primitive societies that are allowing nakedness. One is a religious context, not just a religious context, which I don't disagree that often the female is related to fertility, but that's not the only way it's related. The males are taking offerings, and that one thing on top, we're taking offerings to, or priests or something, and they're taking it to a female deity to give her offerings. And they're naked. They're not going to have sex or anything, where it's just that they're like in the presence of her, they're doing sacred nakedness. The first one is either a priest king or just a priest, and then he is being naked as a religious thing. So, and this is supposedly where civilization is, right? Their origins of it. And so you see that nakedness is not like later how we think of nakedness. Once again, these concepts can't be seen through a modern lens, which I know you already understand.
Oh, yeah.
But we're going to do a whole show on nakedness because it needs to be done.
The rarity of Ophidian figures as grave gifts may indicate differential treatment of the dead, possibly based on age, kinship, or social standing. The earliest undercurrents of Mesopotamian religious thought are believed to have developed in Mesopotamia in the 6th millennium BCE, coinciding with when the region began to be permanently settled with urban centers.
Right, so almost 8,000 to 7,000 years ago.
Oh yeah, it's ancient.
A little bit.
Ancient Mesopotamian religion encompasses the religious beliefs concerning the gods, creation and the cosmos, the origin of humanity, and so forth, and practices of the civilizations ancient Mesopotamia between circa 6000 BCE and CE 500.
Which is a long time.
Oh yeah, that is an incredibly long time.
It's like 8,000 to 1,500 years ago. That's a long time.
Oh yeah. The earliest evidence of Mesopotamian religion dates to the mid-4th millennium BC.
Now, when they say it in that context, they mean as like a whole packet. Where it's before, it's like it's loose, but you can't totally tell. When it starts to get down to the mid-4th century or 5,000, 500, it really is becoming like a more
like a coherent religious package.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which coincides with the invention of writing. See that?
The earliest evidence of Mesopotamian religion dates to the mid-4th millennium BC, coincides with the invention of writing, and involved the worship of forces of nature as providers of sustenance. Although Sumerian and Akkadian peoples in ancient Mesopotamia had been worshipping some form of a mother goddess, Ninhursag, starting in the Ubaid period, circa 5500 to 3700 BCE, or 7500 to 5700 years ago. The Sumerians left the first records and are believed to have been the founders or related to / and mixed / absorbed and / or assimilated with the Ubaidian founders of the civilization of the Ubaid period.
Right, so let's real quick just go to Ninhursag. We already said it was the mountain, in a sense, but let's just click on it so you can read just a little bit about it.
Ninhursag, also known
Which
as
is the easier stuff.
also known as Damgal Nuna or Ninma, was the ancient Sumerian mother goddess of the mountains and of the 7 great deities of Sumer. She is known earliest as a nurturing or fertility goddess. She is the tutelary deity to several Sumerian leaders.
And what's a tutelary deity?
It's like a guardian
There you
angel.
go. Very good. See, you're getting this.
Her best known myths are Enki and Ninhursag, describing her dealings with Enki resulting from his sexual exploits, and Enki and Ninma, a creation myth wherein the two deities compete to create humans. She is referenced or makes brief appearances in others as well, most notably as the mother of Ninurta in the Anzu epic.
Right. So where it says that they two deities compete to create humans, we already read that before when the humans created from clay. And what does her name mean? See her name? The Lady of the Sacred Mountain.
Yeah. From Sumerian Nin, lady, and Harsag, sacred mountain foothill, possibly a reference to the site of her temple, the Iker, house of mountain deeps at Eridu.
Right.
Yeah, like we had read earlier. Yeah.
Right. And that's the actual place. They've kind of like rebuilt. I don't know if it's Saddam Hussein or who rebuilt it now on the top of my head, but someone, because it was like destroyed mud bricks and they rebuilt the temple. Here it is. Oh, look at that.
Oh.
My art.
Mountain house of the deities. Iker, also known as Duranki, is a Sumerian term meaning mountain house. This was Enlil's and Ninlil's ziggurat residence in Nippur. It is the assembly of the gods in the garden of the gods, parallel in Greek mythology to Mount Olympus, and was
You've heard of that, right?
Oh yeah, that's what I was thinking of when I first saw this. Yeah, you have the god assembly on top of the mountain.
Yep.
Yeah, and was the most revered and sacred building of ancient Sumer. There is a clear association of ziggurats with mountain houses.
So the pyramids of Iraq or Sumerians and Mesopotamians relate to this concept, which is still relating to the concepts of creation and the mound of creation and the mountain deity.
Mountain houses play a certain role in Mesopotamian mythology and Assyrio-Babylonian religion, associated with deities such as Anu, Enlil, Enki, and Ninhursag.
Right, and we said this thing right here relates to Ninhursag. Anyways, just because like I said, I want you and people to kind of like get this stuff. Unlike the pseudo people, I want to give you so much information. You don't have to believe me. You can do something better called You Can Understand.
The Sumerians left the first records and are believed to have been the founders or related to / absorbed or assimilated with the Ubaidian founders of the civilization of the Ubaid period, 6500 to 3800 BCE or 8500 to 5800 years ago in Upper Mesopotamia. The first evidence for what is recognizably Mesopotamian religion can be seen with the invention in Mesopotamia of writing, circa 3500 BCE or 5500 years ago. In the 3rd millennium BCE, or between 5,000 to 4,000 years ago, objects of worship were personified and became an expansive cast of divinities with particular functions. The last stages of Mesopotamian polytheism, which developed in the 2nd and 1st millennia BCE, or 4,000 to 3,000 years ago, introduced greater emphasis on personal religion and structured the gods into a monarchical hierarchy, with the national god of each state being the head of the pantheon.
Right, so you had already figured this out, right? Things keep changing, right?
Yeah.
Even though, like I said, what I'm hoping you understand too is that the themes stay kind of similar, but the things do change.
Yeah. Like this consistent core idea, but like the divinities that represent them change through time.
Yes. And sometimes how they interact or whatever changes, but they still are kind of relating to heaven and earth, still kind of relating to separation, still kind of relating to this cosmic water, still, the darkness, then the light, the themes, the big mythological themes really aren't that different, but they are changing. So you have to understand that too.
The most common burial practice during the Ubaid seems to have been primary inhumation, i.e. burial of the complete body. During Ubaid 4, some 80% adults and 94% infants of the burials consisted of primary inhumations. The dead were often accompanied by personal adornments such as beads, necklaces, and headdresses. Pots, presumably, containing foodstuffs were also common. Pieces of red ochre have also been recovered from graves.
Oh, you talk about that a lot, don't you?
Oh, yeah, that's like the worldwide thing, and we're finding it here also.
Yes.
Yeah, so not only do we
here in the Ubaid period, which is like 7,000 to 6,000 years ago.
Burials have been excavated at many Ubaid sites, with exceptionally large numbers coming from Tel Abada, 127 infant burials, and Eridu, 193 burials. By the 5th millennium BCE, children and adults were given differing treatments in death. The available evidence indicates that infants were primarily buried inside the settlement, often near larger, presumably more important dwellings, and often in pots. The association of child burials with larger buildings is well illustrated at the sites of Tel Abada and Tepe Gawra. It has been suggested that this pattern of child burials near larger dwellings was related to increasing social differentiation between kin groups. Adults, on the other hand, were buried at the edge of the settlement in communal burial grounds, in pit burials, or inside clay boxes. Such burial grounds have, for example, been excavated at Eridu. These burial practices represent a clear break from those of the preceding late Neolithic period. During the late Neolithic, burials were often secondary, and burial treatment was very diverse.
So secondary burials were like you die somewhere else and they put you in the ground, or they put you in the ground, they dig you up, and then they bury you again.
The Ubaid witnessed a marked shift toward primary burial, less diverse burial customs, and less diversity in burial gifts. This shift has been interpreted as a reflection of changing perceptions of person. The Ubaid period as a whole, based upon the analysis of grave goods, was one of the increasingly polarized social stratification and decreasing egalitarianism.
Right. So pause like we say. So it's not 100% black and white shift, right?
No.
It's a increasing of the stratification and a decreasing of egalitarianism. So that's why, like we talk about the OCC or the old copper culture, it doesn't have to be a black and white. This thinking that it's either or, like these hard fixed lines that we already now know are pretty much nonsense.
Yeah.
This is
and those black and white lines, like it has to be this or that. We see a lot of that in older literature, whether in North America or here. No,
that's not. This is more accurate.
Yeah.
The things are generally not dramatic, 100% swifts one way or the other. Or that even if you have one thing change, it's not like every other single thing changes. Some people get agriculture and stay naked. Some people that are hunter-gatherers stop being naked and yet don't have agriculture, and then start chieftains and still don't have agriculture. And then some people have agriculture and chieftains and are still somewhat decreasing, but not removed from egalitarianism. So these hard lines that people have, like I told you before, in my opinion, culture is varied. Our interpretation is often limited.
Yeah, so seeing all this like social, the way that different societies can structure themselves, all the variables, it's not black and white at all. It's incredibly varied, and to think it's just black and white, it's flawed thinking.
And that's what I keep trying to say. I really disagree with anyone who tries to have these universal things that are totally black and white. Like, seriously, how much research have you done? Or if you've done it, are you really thinking about what you're looking and reading?
Yeah, it's a good point. Boguki describes this as a phase of trans-egalitarianism, trans-egalitarian competitive households, in which some fall behind as a result of downward social mobility. Morton Fried and Elman Service have hypothesized that Ubaid culture saw the rise of an elite class of hereditary chieftains. Perhaps
I would agree with both are actually correct. That's what we're trying to say. Yeah, you're both right. It's a limiting of the egalitarian, but it's also a chieftain, because those two can interact in a way that doesn't fit black and white things.
Perhaps heads of kin groups linked in some way to the administration of the temple shrines and their granaries, responsible for mediating intra-group conflict and maintaining social order. It would seem that various collective methods, perhaps instances of what Thorkild Jacobson called primitive democracy, in which disputes were previously resolved through a council of one's peers, were no longer sufficient for the needs of the local community.
But see, you could even say, like I said, you could just change the name and say the OCC or the old copper culture can be described as trans-egalitarian and competitive households in which fall behind in their social mobility, and in a rising elite class of hereditary chieftains, perhaps kin groups with administrative. You know what I'm saying?
Well, no, it's funny because like you don't see this much depth for the OCC, let alone that era of North American prehistory. Like with my little corner of the universe in North America,
right?
Like the literature, it's very sparse. Like for in-depth conversations on like social structures, like it's pretty much dry.
Right, and like I said, that's why I know that when I say it, sometimes people are like going, "What?" Because their concept doesn't allow that even. But if you read more stuff like I have, you realize that even areas they think, oh, well, that's the civilized area. Oh, well, really, because they say that it's also varied. And just like I said, even though Sumerians believe nakedness is wrong for elites, they still lower class were naked, the workers, and also sacred times rituals you would be naked, and then you also use nakedness as a form of shame. So all of that actually is occurring at the same time.
Yeah. So just because, so like just because you see a depiction of somebody naked, whether it's a painting or a figurine, it doesn't mean that they're primitive. It's just a very shallow way of interpreting it.
And like I said, even in a civilized, supposedly Sumeria, right, a civilized culture, they're showing it as multiple layered. It shows it as both. It could be you're poor, you're not the elite, but the elite are being naked in religion, and then they also have shaming of people by doing naked. So it's all actually occurring. Like I said, culture is not limited. This culture idea nakedness is not limited. In fact, it's extremely varied. It's our conception that it's limited.
Ubaid culture originated in the south, but still has clear connections to earlier cultures in the region of Middle Iraq. The appearance of the Ubaid culture has sometimes been linked to the so-called Sumerian problem, related to the origins of Sumerian civilization. Whatever the ethnic origins of this group, this culture saw for the first time a clear tripartite social division among intensive subsistence peasant farmers, with crops and animals coming from the north, tent-dwelling nomadic pastoralists dependent upon their herds, and hunter-fisher folk of the Arabian littoral living in reed huts. Stein and Osbal describe the Near East Uikumen that resulted from Ubaid expansion, contrasting it to the colonial expansionism of the later Uruk period.
Right. So the first thing is saying that yes, the North is influenced from the South, but it wasn't a colonial or a forced conversion in a sense. But later, it's more forced.
A contextual analysis comparing different regions shows that the Ubaid expansion took place largely through the peaceful spread of an ideology, leading to the formation of numerous new indigenous identities that appropriated and transformed superficial elements of Ubaid material culture into locally distinct expressions.
Right, and that's how I kind of see religion. A lot of religion was peacefully spread as an ideology, leading to the formation of numerous new indigenous identities or religion identities, appropriated and transformed superficial elements of the religious, material culture into local distinct expressions. I'm telling you, that is exactly religion's a cultural product, and it moved through cultural migration.
There is some evidence of warfare during the Ubaid period, although it is extremely rare. The burnt village at Tel Sabi Abyad could be suggestive of destruction during war, but it could also have been due to other causes, such as wildfire or accident. Ritual burning is also possible, since the bodies inside were already dead by the time they were burned. A mass grave at Tepe Gara contained 24 bodies, apparently burned without any funeral rituals, possibly indicating it was a mass grave from violence. Copper weapons were also present in the form of arrowheads and sling bullets, although these could have been used for other purposes. 2 clay pots recovered from the era have decorations showing arrows used for the purpose of hunting. A copper axe head was made in the late Ubaid period, which could have been a tool or a weapon. During the late Ubaid period, around 4500 to 4000 BCE, there was some increase in social polarization, with central houses in the settlements becoming larger, but there were no real cities until the later Uruk period. The Uruk period, circa 4000/3900 to 3300/3100 BCE, follows the Ubaid period and is a period of the proto-historic Chalcolithic to early Bronze Age in Mesopotamia in the ancient Near East.
Yes, and Chalcolithic is the Copper Age. And the reason why they call it Chalcolithic and not Copper Age, because I've said this before, I go, why do they call it that? Well, one of the reasons is because they're still using stone tools.
Yeah.
Just so people know. Although
it's just like what we see with the OCC over in North America. It's like a Chalcolithic society. You have all this investment in copper, but at the same time, they're still using a lot of stone tools.
Exactly. So that's what that kind of means, what they're referring. People are still absolutely using stone tools, 100%. There's no slowdown. It's just now they're adding lots of copper.
Named after the city of Uruk in southern Mesopotamia, this period saw a set of major innovations that laid the foundations of ancient Mesopotamian civilization. The early phases of the late Chalcolithic in the second half of the 5th millennium BCE are equivalent to the latest phases of the Ubaid period. It is the period of the appearance of cities in the state, the so-called urban revolution, a phenomenon particularly visible in lower Mesopotamia, notably on the site of Uruk, where excavations of the monumental center for the levels of the second half of the 4th millennium BC have revealed the existence of this culture. This phenomenon is marked by a greater specialization of activities and functions, which are accompanied by technical innovations, developments of irrigated agriculture, appearance of the potter's wheel, and of ceramics and bricks of standardized formats produced in large quantities, establishment of sheep farming producing wool, and also on a large scale, in textile workshops, etc. The development of state institutions is accompanied by that of management instruments, allowing the supervision of workers and other resources. And it is in this context that the first form of writing, proto-cuneiform, appears around 3400-3300 BCE, essentially for administrative purposes.
Right, see, pause right there. That's where people try to go, they didn't have religion or it wasn't a focus yet. I'm like, oh, they had a focus on religion. You just mean when they started having writing symbols, the reason they started writing symbols wasn't a religious reason. But that's wrong to think that that means they didn't already have a religion. As we already showed and you read, they absolutely already had religion. Language, the fact that the first cuneiform doesn't like talk a lot about gods was just because why it was invented was more of a thing for business or whatever, and not directly, here's a picture, why it was correct, and also how it relates to other languages, how Mesopotamia, when it invented it, Egypt and everybody Iran, everyone starts getting the languages, the writing sense influences everybody. It was just like the language does, and also the religion. And even that one thing, you look at those are in a sense art in Iraq of the priest king, and then in Egypt of the early priest king, all both about the same time, about 3,300 or 5,300 years ago. So before the first pharaoh, they both have this neck beard and this little, derby hat, and they're totally naked and their dick is out.
At least the one in purple and even the others, they're pretty identical.
Right, but I was just saying those two in the purple box, those are the one on the left is Iraq, and the one on the right is Egypt. And they literally, but like I said, this is also why people at first thought that someone had invaded in a sense, which, like I said, I tried to explain at the beginning, that's not correct. So, but it's also not correct to think that this is a totally uninfluenced African only, no outside anything culture. Oh, that's wrong. So
no, because even like today, I still see people on X or social media just still claiming that Egypt is like a pure African, like 100% society.
That's totally wrong.
Even going way back.
It's totally wrong from the beginning. Before the first pharaoh, it wasn't. It wasn't. So done. It was not.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's also wrong to think it's totally an outside religion or culture. That's also wrong. It's a blended, multi, racial culture and both multi-ideaed culture.
The development of state institutions is accompanied by that of management instruments, allowing the supervision of workers and other resources. And it is in this context that the first form of writing, proto-cuneiform, appears around 3400 to 3300 BCE, essentially for administrative purposes. Other proto-urban sites and complex political entities also appeared in Susiana, southwestern Iran, northern Mesopotamia, and western Syria, as well as in southeastern Anatolia. Nevertheless, lower Mesopotamia is the most dynamic region of all, the most urbanized, the most innovative, and the most influential. It is the starting point of an Urukian expansion, a much discussed long-term process seeing the implantation of outposts and colonies from southern Mesopotamia and a significant cultural impact of this region on the others. The Urukian expansion, which is evident on the sites through the spread of the material and cultural traits typical of this culture, and Urukian kit, including seen at the beginning of the 4th millennium BCE, circa 4000 to 3800 BCE in the western Zagros.
Right, which is like Iran. So it basically is Turkey, Iran, Syria, but it's also at the same time, they don't call it the Uruk, it's expansion. But at the exact same time, coming from the exact same area, it also goes to Egypt. They just don't call it the exact same thing, just so people understand. It's not called that. And if you look on a map when they show like where Uruk went, they don't list Egypt, but it literally did go to Egypt. It's just not called the same term. But to understand the idea correctly, yeah, it's the same. So, and I'll show you a thing real quick about the Uruk expansion, because I think it's helpful to, if you don't never seen this stuff, it's helpful to get like a visual representation. You see that where Uruk is?
Oh yeah, I've seen maps like that a lot.
Yeah, right. The yellow,
Yeah,
and
like
then
the
the
classic,
arrows
yeah.
saying where it's going, sort of.
Mhm.
Right. And then there's I think another map that shows bigger expansion, but there's all kinds of stuff that expanded when it went. Here's another one it shows. See how it shows it going into Iran. And it shows it going over to, Syria and stuff. But like I said, this personal one is not saying that it's going to Egypt, but it is going to Egypt.
Yeah, so it looks like it's time to update the map. Huh.
Well, right. But see, the problem is that once again, how people study things, they do it like as in different areas. They're like archaeology. They focus on just Syria or just Sumerians or just the OCC. They don't really think.
They're specializing on a certain region, and they're not really looking outside that specialization, that region, as much as they should.
Well, right. So right, exactly. So, and I will show you too the one for the Mesopotamian So that's that one. Then there's one that shows the Mesopotamian and Egypt, how its relations are, and you'll see what I'm talking about. See that one?
Okay,
So at the same time, one of those. The reason why there's two arrows, it could have gone both those. They're not exactly sure which it got there. The question is exactly how it went. They don't know the exact route that it took, but it's 6,000 years ago to 5,000. That's what it's doing. I'm thinking personally, it probably went both. I don't think it was an either or. I think that, especially, just think from 6,000 to 5,000, that's 1,000 years. I'm thinking they have plenty of time to take different routes.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think also sometimes, once again, they're being limited in how they're, understanding stuff. They need to understand it in a way that is more expansive to the whole area and what's going on. Like I said, that's why I told you I feel like the beneficial thing to do, like we're doing, is to get the big picture, to stop doing magnifying glass and then saying, well, I don't really know if it relates. We do know it's complicated, but you have to look at more data. You can't just look at one thing.
Yeah, because even back then, like Egypt, it's not isolated. The societies are interconnected.
Interconnected, yes.
Yeah.
So then the fact that you see the religions connected and similar, well, yeah, the whole culture was. Not a shocker.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take Graham Hancock, and it's also not African only, or it's not white people gave it to Africa, all this nonsense. It is not, like I said, not Richard Dawkins' theory of the greatest meme, and it's not Carl Jung's, the cosmic mind or some bullcrap. Like I said, it's more simple. It's just trade. It's trade and trading ideas. And then, people want the fantastic, and that's, I know why my stuff is not as interesting, as it's too bogged down by facts and not real fantastical. But that's the truth.
Egypt-Mesopotamia relations were the relations between the civilizations of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia in the Middle East. They seem to have developed from the 4th millennium BCE, starting in the Uruk period for Mesopotamia, circa 4000 to 3100 BCE, and the half a millennium younger Girzian culture of prehistoric Egypt, circa 3500 to 3200 BCE, and constituted a largely one-way body of influences from Mesopotamia into Egypt.
Oh, what was that? A one-way body of influence?
Yeah, largely one-way. Yeah, largely one-way body of influence from Mesopotamia into Egypt. In the middle of the 4th millennium BCE, circa 3500 to 3200 BCE, real colonies or Urukian enclaves along important trade routes can be seen. Most sites are located along trade routes, especially in river valleys, are found from the Caucasus to Pakistan.
Right, so the Cossack Mountains to Pakistan, these Uruk stuff, but they're also going over to Egypt as well.
After a late Uruk phase, circa 3500 to 3300/3200 BCE, marking the apex of this phenomenon, after 3300 to 3200 BCE, this dynamic ceased, and the Near East became culturally more fragmented.
Right, so once again, it changed again, right?
Yeah,
but
it
they
keeps
already
changing.
changed again, but they already transmitted these early mythic ideas that then in situ or whatever start to develop on their own.
Mesopotamian influences can be seen in the visual arts of Egypt, in architecture and technology, weaponry and imported products, religious imagery, economic practices, in agriculture and livestock, in genetic input, and also in the likely transfer of writing from Mesopotamia to Egypt, and generated deep-seated parallels in the early stages of both cultures.
See, now pause for a second. Wouldn't it be insane if they also didn't get religious ideas? Right?
If you you have all this like trade, social interaction, or even detecting the genetics, like why wouldn't the religion, like why wouldn't you expect that to be transferred too?
It would seem that almost that would be a given, right?
Yeah.
So people are like, I don't know, Damien, if they're really connected. They're kind of different. I'm like, seriously? You don't think they're so hold on a second. So let's read it again. So the visual arts, the architecture, the technology, the weaponry, the imported products, the religious imagery, the economic practices, the agriculture, the livestock, the genetic input, but also the transfer of writing. And yet you don't think that religion ideas also went there?
No, that's foolish. When you stop and think about it, like you have all this social interaction, why wouldn't you expect at least one person to bring their religion with them?
Right?
Like
seriously.
It's like,
so I don't even see why people even argue with me. Are you for real? Come on. But don't you after reading this stuff and being informed, don't you feel more confident?
Yeah.
We read the myths at the beginning and they sound similar. And now we're seeing, well, of course they sound similar. They are similar.
Yeah. A similar Mesopotamian influence during this period is seen in Elam in ancient Iran, the Levant, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, and Israel, Anatolia, Turkey, and northern parts of the Arabian Peninsula.
Right, and so that is why they all share this similar ancient cosmology. It's ancient Eastern cosmology. We're going to go to that real quick just because I love proving that I'm right. Unlike Graham Hancock, when you have evidence, you know what you show? The evidence. You don't say, well, I don't know, all the stuff that archaeologists have found. No, yeah, you're right. Nothing's ever proven an ancient high, technology society. And I'm like, well, unlike him, I do have evidence. And so I know what I love to do? Go to the evidence. So here's a Wikipedia page on the ancient Near Eastern cosmology, which it says the ancient Near East, the Middle East today, Egypt, Persia, right, which is Iran, the Levant, which are in Turkey, and the Arabian Peninsula. Oh my gosh. And the basic understanding of the world, the religion was the flat earth, right? We talked about already, did we not?
Yeah, we
did. What else could read it?
The cosmology of the ancient Near East refers to beliefs about where the universe came from, how it developed, and its physical layout in the ancient Near East, an area that corresponds with the Middle East today, including Mesopotamia, Egypt, Persia, the Levant, Anatolia, and the Arabian Peninsula. The basic understanding of the world in this region from pre-modern times included a flat earth, a solid layer or barrier above the sky, the firmament, cosmic ocean located above the firmament, a region above the cosmic ocean where the gods lived, and a netherworld located at the furthest region in the direction down. Creation myths explained where the universe came from, including which gods created it and how, as well as how humanity was created. These beliefs are attested as early as the 4th millennium BC and dominated.
Which is like 6,000 years ago.
And dominated until the modern era.
Oh, right, because the Christian Bible has all these ideas. Oh, okay, wait a minute. And the Quran too. Oh my God.
With the only major competing system being the Hellenistic cosmology that developed in ancient Greece in the mid-1st millennium BCE.
Which also, the
Yeah.
ancient Greece were also heavily influenced
Mhm.
from this stuff to begin with. Although, as we showed, right, they had a fire outside the world instead of an ocean. So, yeah, a little different.
Just a little different, but like we had talked about, some of these things changed.
Right, they
time,
changed.
especially after thousands of years.
Right, 6,000 till 2,500. Yeah, that's a few thousand years.
Yeah,
so
that's
and then so how big of area was this religion influenced? Geographically,
these views are known from the Mesopotamian cosmologies from Babylonia, Sumer, and Akkad, the Levantine or West Semitic cosmologies from Ugarit and ancient Israel and Judah, the biblical cosmology,
the Egyptian Bible.
Oh, how
it's
about
not
that?
special. Oh, wow.
The Egyptian cosmology from ancient Egypt and the Anatolian cosmologies from the Hittites. This system of cosmology went on to have a profound influence on views in early Greek cosmology, later Jewish cosmology, patristic cosmology, and Islamic cosmology, including Quranic cosmology.
Wait a minute. Are you saying all this is connected? But what I tried to show you too was it's not just these are religion connected and no cultural connection. I try to show you, oh no, it is cultural connections and also religious connections.
Yeah, it looks like they go hand in hand a lot of the time.
It's almost like religion was a cultural product that moved in cultural migrations.
Yeah, who would have thought?
And you see, they says the cosmology is the structure of the cosmos. Go ahead and read that. Okay. What is the structure of the cosmos?
The many civilizations of the ancient Near East shared most of their main views about the structure of the cosmos.
The main views, as we would explain it in a mythology thing, is the mythemes. The main mytheme.
Like that core idea.
That's correct.
Yeah. A situation which held for thousands of years. Widely held beliefs about cosmography included a flat earth and a solid heaven firmament, both of which are disc-shaped. A primordial cosmic ocean.
No.
When the firmament is created, it separates the cosmic ocean into two bodies of water. It gets better. The heavenly upper waters located on the top of the firmament, which act as a source of rain. The lower waters that the earth is above and that the earth rests on. They act as a source of rivers, springs, and other earthly bodies of water.
Wow.
The region above the upper waters, namely the abode of the gods. The netherworld, the furthest region in the direction downwards, below the lower waters.
And then read down here where it says, some misconception are held of Near Eastern. One misconception is the idea that ziggurats were considered cosmic objects that reached up to heaven. See, they didn't do that. And then if you notice too, they have similar cosmological ideas, like the idea of a primordial state of chaos, which we already talked about, and then later a cosmic monster, primordial sea, and
we also talked about.
We also talked about, exactly. And there's also the unity of the thing, and there's also the center of the universe, or which is generally a mountain or a pole or whatever. And then there's also the heaven and earth, and it was common for them to refer to the whole thing, which was two parts. And then also there's three heavens and three earths, which is something we didn't talk about, but it's just relating to things. Then there's the seven heavens and the seven earths, which is even more complicated, but we'll get to one of these days. And there's the firmament that it is even in the book of Genesis, the Bible, and in Egypt. And then the earth, which of course is flat, it's flat.
Yeah.
And then the four corners of the earth, meaning that the earth is broken up into four parts with the center, or it could mean the square earth like the Chinese say. There's the cosmic mountain, which also means the axis mundi or the world tree, which we also talked about, which also is in Zechariah 6:1, so also in the Bible. And then the sun, the moon, which we could talk about that too, but the stars and the planets, the upper waters, which is the cosmic ocean, the lower waters, which is Abzu or Nu. Remember the Egyptian god Nu?
Yeah.
That's the dual gender.
Yeah. You have the water one and the inert one. Yeah.
See, you remember.
Yeah. Then there's Nut, the female one.
See, you got it. Yeah. Creation of and look at this one. Separation of heaven and earth. So they all are sharing this. What the?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's something that people just came up with accidentally. The separation of heaven and earth. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and when
Anyway,
you have all these societies around each other that are interacting, they're trading, they're exchanging marriage partners, but their
yeah,
religion, that has to be independently developed. Especially
right.
no.
But you see,
No,
so what I try to show is,
Mhm.
unlike the Graham Hancock, well, there really isn't anything that matches, because that's one of my favorite sayings from Graham Hancock, which I go ahead and put on. It's just too damn funny when people think that me and him are anything alike. What was my favorite quote from Graham Hancock?
In what archaeologists have studied, yes, we can say there is no evidence of an advanced civilization.
I absolutely love that, because that sums up the difference in his bullshit and my evidence-based approach.
And you want to know what's interesting? In like all the books he's written, I don't think he's ever talked about like the Paleolithic cultures of Europe. So like he's like so far like out there, like compared to you, that for somebody to even
not
compare
even
him
in
to
any
you.
kind of good way. It's like some people, like someone before said, well, I like to follow rabbit holes, and I'm like, yeah, but don't go down there and eat the rabbit shit.
Oh, that's a good saying. That's a really good saying. I'm gonna have to make a note of that. You can go down the rabbit hole, but don't eat the rabbit shit.
Right?
Yeah.
In other words, what my point is trying to be, if it seems like what I'm showing, if it seems like things are connected, go ahead and investigate that.
Yeah.
But don't add bullshit or believe bullshit that's not supported. I'm showing you it is supported. This is not me guessing. I don't need obscure things. We can go to Wikipedia. No. This is well known. It's not like I'm just showing you stuff that's well known. And I told you before, how another reason do you know that Damien stuff is not, even though it's people see it as not standard to what people say, how many archaeologists that are my friends ever attack me?
I can't really think of any.
Yeah, right, none.
Like John
once
Hoops,
in a rare thing, people have said one or two things about what I say, and then I usually say something to them and show them some facts or show them why I think that way, and then they stop attacking. Because unlike Graham Hancock, I have reasons why I say what I say. And once you see what I'm saying, it's pretty hard to say that what I'm saying is not at least at the minimum reasonable.
Yeah, and even John Hoops, one of the harshest critics of pseudoscience, he's been on your show multiple times, and he even said that he gave you his strongest endorsement.
He did. And in fact, one of the videos, he actually called me a shaman. He said, you are like a shaman, because a shaman is someone that brings us knowledge. And so that's a pretty strong endorsement from John Hoops.
Oh, yeah.
Who, Graham Hancock and all the other losers, that push nonsense, that don't even come close to anything that I do, he doesn't say that about them. And why would he anyways? There's no reason to. What they say, that's also why, if you notice something too, they don't attack me either.
Oh, I wonder why.
Right? I've told him before. The one guy, Dan Richards, I told him, oh, please, Dan, go through any of my blogs, any of my art, and prove me wrong. Crickets. He goes, I'm not going to do that. I go, I know you're not, because you can't.
See, and what I find interesting is, like, not only you, but a lot of the other, like, archaeologists or avocationals that try to debate these guys, when they give, like, solid evidence, they don't usually debate the evidence. They'll just go straight for the personal attack. Like, they'll say, like, oh, you're fucking stupid, or you're ugly, or something so childish like that.
Like, it means nothing.
Exactly. Like, just, okay, so what?
Or someone's called me before a clown because I have a red beard. Oh, okay, well, this clown's kicking your ass, so I don't know.
It's irrelevant to what we're talking about.
Completely.
It doesn't matter.
My mountains of evidence, your opinion that's unsupported completely and contradicted a lot.
No, I swear, like, some of these guys.
They also tell me when they talk, I literally can't. It's painful because I'm like, you don't even know what you're talking about. You just like come up with dumb bullshit, or they pick on stupid little things that maybes. I'm like, why even say maybe? There's literal evidence. We know kind of what happened. So let's go back to reading that. Enough of the nonsense.
Yeah. Okay. The Sumerians around 4000 BCE, and the White Temple was built on top of it. Anu Ziggurat and White Temple at Uruk. The original pyramidal structure, the Anu Ziggurat, dates to the Sumerians around 4000 BCE, and the White Temple was built on top of it circa 3500 BCE.
So before the Egyptian Egyptian pyramids.
Yeah, so even before the Egyptian pyramids, we already have this idea.
Right. And then they do influence. And I will show a picture so people can grasp what these things look like and how it's an evolution. And they are different. So it's wrong to think that they're like exactly the same, but it's also wrong to think they're not influenced or connected. And I'll show you. This is showing the evolution of what happened with the Egyptians and what happened with the Mesopotamia. And
A mastaba was
right?
Yeah, you can see like the evolution, if you want to call it that, from like this basic flat platform mound.
Correct.
And then it goes like to you have like the platform mound with the temple on top,
right?
And then you get like the really fancy ziggurat, and then at the bottom you have like almost the same thing from the beginning, like the mastaba. It's almost like this platform mound.
Correct.
But then it goes to the step pyramid, and then the pyramid.
See?
But it's almost like there's that same core idea behind them.
I completely agree. Yes, you're correct. It's not like they were totally, and they also, which is important to focus on, is they had different sort of things. In Mesopotamia, it's a temple, and in Egypt, it's a burial mound, but they literally are sharing all kinds of features which are related. So that's important to grasp. And then the other thing is that a lot of people forget that a lot of the pyramids, right, in Egypt had temples right outside of them where people would worship. So it's still kind of wrong to say it's not related to a temple. Also, it's not directly, the mound itself is not a temple, but it is related to and did have temples right outside that do relate to the person that is buried inside, like a in a sense cult to the pharaoh or whatever. So they are related.
Yeah.
So and like I said, I know you grasp that, but also here's another picture that shows the religious concept. So the other one was the architecture people know. This is explaining how you go from the mound of creation and sort of the cosmic mountain, and then how that evolved and eventually becomes the pyramid and the ziggurats, and how they're similar. And you see they start as mounds, not as pyramids, and then they turn into a double mountain, which inside the double mountain, the sun comes out in both religions. So they're still related. And then if you notice, the Egyptian is the exact same amount of steps. The only difference in the Mesopotamian is they put a temple on the top of it. And then the pyramid-shaped thing has the pyramid mound or the mound of creation as a little temple thing on top of it. But so does the last Mesopotamian one. It still has the temple on top. But anyways, just to show you that once again, the cosmic and the architecture, the cosmic beliefs and the architecture are also matching. It's not like it's a one-off. Both these concepts, and you notice that not only is the concept evolving, as you already said, they change. Yes, they did. But as they evolve, of course, they're still calling it the same thing. They're still calling it either the cosmic mountain in a sense for like Mesopotamia, and they're calling it the mound of creation when it comes to the Egyptians. But is it really that different? What like I said before, want you to grasp is the myth theme isn't really changing that much. So that's what I feel you have to grasp. And we're going to real quick just to evidence. If you haven't, why not go there? So we're going to go there to Egypt and go look at their creation myths to help back up what I'm saying, because why not? So you see where it says Egyptian Wikipedia. See, like I said, it's just right there, free for everybody. You can buy books and stuff explain all this stuff too, but there's no reason, and it's right here. So it's not like Graham Hancock. I don't need to go read obscure shit or whatever. This is all free because and just because he doesn't know it, I guess, doesn't mean it's not actually true. So if you notice in the corner, right, it shows that's the two mountains that I showed you, right?
Oh yeah, look at that. Yeah.
Right? What's in it? That's the sun, and supposedly that's the sun coming up, and then the circle with the goddesses are pouring the water around the circle that everything floats on. Right? And if you read below it, what does it say? It says the sun rises over the circular mound of what? creation, even though now it's not one mound, it's two mounds, right? And the goddesses are pouring out the primeval water around it. Oh my God. So the same shit. The primeval mound comes out of the water, right? And so what are the common elements in the stuff which is the ancient Egyptian creation myths? The common elements. The different myths have some elements in common, or like we know, they have myth themes in common. And they all, so that's a good word to use, all, not some, they all the different ones, held that the world had arisen out of a lifeless waters of chaos called Nu. And you see right there, that's the female version of the bi-gendered deity. They also include a pyramid-shaped mound called the Benben.
Which was the first thing to emerge from the waters.
Which was, originally it looked like a dirt mound, but then became a pyramid structure, right? So, right, and I'll show you that one looks like a pyramid, but that's not the only thing that it is, because it also, as I showed you in the evolution, which I've showed archaeologists that too, and they agree. In fact, I had one that did Göbekli Tepe where he says, I should keep doing what I'm doing. I'm doing good stuff. Yeah, I know. I'm trying. It's hard when you have all these pseudo people talking endless nonsense when, like I said, also people, feel like they want to know secret truth. There is. It's called the real truth. You don't need to go in and find some, outside thing like Graham Hancock. The real truth is quite interesting all on its own. And, like I'll show you. So the first one I'll show you is going to be the mound of creation as a mound, not a pyramid, because they're showing it as a literal pyramid. But here we go right here. So there, right, and there's that deity with the male and female deity as the water, and then the mound is round, and then the god Anum is coming out of the mound, and then the water it's in is the primordial waters. And you notice too, the Benben can be this round mound, can be this pyramid of a bunch of blocks, but also can just be a solid stone cut in the shape pyramid that's on top of the right. That's not the only, in a sense, symbol that it can be. It also can be, in the shape, in the sense of a mound, but with a different deity, as we already talked about. Which, like I said, it's important to understand that it's not this one thing that you should be focusing on. You should be focusing on how the myth themes are similar, not that the structures stay exactly the same. They're calling all these things the mound of creation. Here's another picture, right? So this is not Nun, right? The half male, half female. This is Nut, which is only female. And then Geb is the earth mound, but it looks like a person, but it actually is the mound of creation. But in this one, they just draw it as a person. And then air, the deity, Shmu or whatever, is the air that's holding the firmament. And in the Mesopotamian, it's air deity that makes it. And then in the Bible, it's the Spirit of the Lord does its air breath separates. Well, it's still air, right?
Yeah.
Right? Wind, air, whatever. I mean, so it's important, like I said, to understand that this stuff is not really different. I know it's complicated to understand, but it's just like the pyramids themselves, right? I'll show you. So the pyramids are all not equally the same. This shows the sizes change and the shapes change a little tiny bit, but we all call them pyramids, right? And we all think of them as the same culture, even though they're doing all kinds of sizes and difference and changes, and even internally they're not the same, right? Not one of them, in a sense, is exactly the same structure. But yet we know they're the same structure. They're the same, culture, whatever layout in a sense. That's what I'm trying to say. That's the same with religion. It's all kind of different variations, but it's all really kind of the same myth theme. It's not really all created by itself. You get it. I know. So, like I said, it's important to understand so that you can follow along, because otherwise it can get confusing. But we're going to go real quick to what a myth theme is, because I've used this word several times, so it might as well read what it is. Well, I'm saying, because I have evidence that backs up what I'm saying, so why not just do that? Go ahead and read to us what a mytheme is, because for us that don't understand.
In structuralism influenced studies of mythology, a mytheme is a fundamental generic unit of narrative structure, typically involving a relationship between a character, an event, and a theme, from which myths are thought to be constructed. A minimal unit that is always found shared with other related mythemes, and reassembled in various ways, bundled, or linked in more complicated relationships. For example, the myths of Greek Adonis and Egyptian Osiris share several elements, leading some scholars to conclude that they share a source, i.e., images passed down in cultures or from one to another, being ascribed new interpretations of the action depicted, as well as new names in various readings of icons.
Right. So we can go back to the blog now again. I'm just trying to show you there's a lot of reason to think this, and how I am thinking. I'm not inventing this type of thinking. This is a kind of a standard way to view mythology. So, but once again, it requires just a little bit of research.
A ziggurat is a type of massive structure built in ancient Mesopotamia and Iran. It has the form of a terraced compound of successively receding stories or levels. The Sumerians believed that the gods lived in the temple at the top of the ziggurats, so only priests and other highly respected individuals could enter. Sumerian society offered these individuals such gifts as music, harvested produce, and the creation of devotional statues to entice them to live in the temple. Ziggurats were built by ancient Sumerians, Akkadians, Elamites, Eblaites, and Babylonians for local religions.
Right, so it was carried on from multiple kinds of cultures.
Each ziggurat was part of a temple complex with other buildings. Before the ziggurats, there were raised platforms that date from the Ubaid period during the 6th millennium BCE, or between 8,000 to 7,000 years ago. The ziggurats...
Right. So they're already doing this stuff for a long time. And in my opinion, like I've said, the idea of all this is related to each other, like shell mounds and dolmens and all this kind of stuff is similar. It's easier, like I said before, to understand when you remember that the building of a earthen mound is like 30,000 years old. You know, the earth diver myth, which literally is almost like these other ones. It's just the primordial water, the darkness, and then the dirt comes out because they build it. It's just a different way the dirt came out, where these ones, other ways the dirt comes out as a mound, but it's still doing that. And then the mounds are relating to why they build the cosmic mountain, why they build the pyramids. And we know in the Americas, they build the mounds because of the earth diver and the world tree and the axis mundi. Yeah, exactly what all these others are doing. Oh.
Yeah, it's almost like they're all related to each other. Yeah.
Almost like, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to do too, is I look at all these structures and I stop seeing them as different parts, but start like the mytheme, seeing what the things are that they're the similar, how they're sharing these ideas, how these ideas, if you look at it in that kind of context, you start to grasp it's not that different. A shell mound, an earth mound, a pyramid, a mountain, all these things are related ideas, especially when you start listening to their religion ideas, and they also match. So you start to see, to me, wait a minute. And that's why I have here. So you have the Golden Mountains, and then you have the first Kurgan, not too far from the Golden Mountains, and Kurgan's at Dolmen. So that one on the top, right, it says Denmark. That's a dolmen covered in an earthen mound, which is a burial, like the pyramids, but also relates to these other things that are other mounds and whatever doing the same things. In fact, we know shell mounds, don't people get buried in them?
They absolutely do.
Right. So dolmens are mounds with people buried inside. Shell mounds, people buried inside. Pyramids, people buried inside. Kurgans, people buried inside. Really, the weird one is the Sumerians that build mountain temples, but they're not that weird. When you start hearing that the cosmic mountain came out of the water, you're like, well, that's what Egypt thinks, and Sumerian and the Americas and Siberia, they all think that. Oh, okay, now I get it. So that's why I say that I feel that we should be seeing them as a corpus of shared ideas of why they're doing this. Like I know that it's hard at first to grasp this, but when you start digging into the details, the facts, it starts looking clearer and clearer, not more away like the Graham Hancock. There's no evidence that shows this. No. Where mine is, oh, wait a minute, the cultures are similar, the DNAs are matching, the religions are matching, the architecture is matching. Oh, wait a minute. So there's lots of reason to think that there's a relation.
Each ziggurat was part of a temple complex with other buildings. Before the ziggurats, there were raised platforms that date from the Ubaid period during the 6th millennium BCE, or between 8,000 to 7,000 years ago. The ziggurats began as platforms, oval, rectangular, or square.
See, pause for a second there. Do you see it's not just one kind? Because you know that's a truth for the dirt mounds in the Americas. They are oval, they're rectangular, and they're square.
The ziggurat.
Right? So once again, culture is varied. It's our understanding that's limited.
Oh, yeah. The ziggurat was a mastaba-like structure with a flat top. A mastaba was a type of ancient Egyptian tomb starting in the pre-dynastic era, before 3100 BCE, in the form of a flat-top rectangular structure with inward-sloping sides. The religion of late Uruk period is very difficult to approach, whether in lower Mesopotamia or in neighboring regions. Places of worship are difficult to identify by archaeology, particularly in the Iana area of Uruk.
Right.
But
so pause for 1 second. This is why I don't focus on trying to tell archaeologists they have to be wrong and I have right, because I understand from an archaeology, without grasping all this other stuff that I show, or mythology studies, it is kind of hard to feel confident. And before I got really into the mythology studies, I also didn't feel confident thinking all this stuff was related and was hard to see in just the archaeology. So you can say I'm saying, so this goes back to my point too, what I've said before. I do not believe archaeologists are trying to hide this. I am actually someone who's bringing all kinds of DNA, languages, mythology understanding, archaeology understanding, cultural understanding, together. And that's why it seems people don't usually do this. Don't like me do the whole world, So yes, it's so that my point is I'm just saying it's not like I'm a truth teller and they're hiding anything. I don't think they are hiding. No. I feel like that's you get my point. I feel like that's because I know the pseudo people believe this.
Oh yeah.
Their narrative. Not totally feeling confident because you haven't done that other research doesn't make you wrong. You know what? It is the accurate position to be skeptical until you understand the evidence. That is not an unscientific position. That is in fact the scientific position.
Or if you just genuinely don't know the answer to something, doesn't mean you're lying or you're trying to hide evidence.
Exactly. And so you get my point. I don't fault people for not knowing as much as I know about all this stuff in a larger, context. I've done a lot of research that other people haven't done, and I didn't limit my focus. Like you talked about learning the OCC. Imagine learning that, but never learning anything else. You wouldn't know some of the stuff I've already helped you understand, which in the long run does help you understand what is could or possibly be going on in the OCC. Because when you get this larger understanding and then you see what they're doing, you're like, I recognize that.
Oh no, even earlier when we were talking about the dynamics of the Uruk expansion, there are bits of that are pretty similar to what's going on with the OCC. You have this core a Chalcolithic society, and there are these early outposts, these little trading spots, and it fans out from there, and you can see as the centuries go on, different iconography in societies far away from it, and it's really similar to what that core region is doing in Wisconsin.
That's why I told you I think it's going to be very beneficial you learning more of my stuff and how I present it, even for not just for what I'm presenting, but then that understanding could be like a template to help you understand and explain what is going on. Because yes, cultures are not that unique. They do a lot of similar stuff.
No, I think it's going to be really beneficial because, like I had mentioned to you, Ryan Peterson, that the PhD author of like the Isle Royale supply chain papers, he got back to me and he's interested in like co-authoring a paper.
Cool.
Yeah, so like the stuff that we're talking about, it's directly applicable to whatever we put together in the future.
Absolutely. Because you can show reference. You can show
Oh,
this is
yeah.
what's happening here. Here, this happened before. We have more information on this, and we can see the correlations are doing similar things. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I even told him that like this Chalcolithic, no, not just in Europe but in the Middle East, I'm like pretty much using this as a case study because it's the only other time in the world, like for that era, that we see this intensive copper usage.
Yes, but like you said, copper usage, but also stone tool usage is heavy too. It's not. It didn't go down. It stayed heavy.
Yeah. Places of worship are difficult to identify by archaeology, particularly in the Iana area of Uruk. But in several cases, cult functions of buildings seem probable if we judge by their resemblance to buildings that are certainly sanctuaries from the following periods: the White Temple of Uruk, the temples of Eridu and Tel Ugair. Cultic installations such as altars and basins have been identified there. Temples are also identified at Tel Barak, Eye Temple, Arslan Tepe, Temple Seat, and Susa, High Terrace. It would then appear that the deities were already venerated in temples from this period.
Which is what I say, that the religion's pretty old. Everybody thinks that some new thing happened. No.
The development of sacred spaces used for important ceremonies shows that religion tends to be spatially separated from the secular, an evolution that may be linked to the period's dynamics. Of great interest is the emergence of high terraces supporting cultic buildings, Uruk, Susa, landmarks of the urban landscape. Documents dating from the Uruk period indicate that deities were already complex figures, conceptualized in human anthropomorphism, astral, and symbolic forms, including animals. Uruk texts and iconography indicate that the goddess Inanna, the deified planet Venus, was already the city's tutelar deity.
So there's Venus, right? This is someone asked me in the video yesterday I did, right? They said that people in Samaria believed in the planets. And I said, well, not really. They saw them as wandering stars. When they say Venus, they thought Venus was the morning star that rose in the morning. When the sun rises, when it first goes from darkness to light, they think that's Venus. And then it turns into the sun, which is a different star. So they had no fucking clue of real science.
No. And there's no evidence that they had like advanced telescopes or even like a sophisticated glass back then that would have allowed them to see the planets.
You're wise, right? And I had wrongly said that I think the Babylonians might have started to understand a little more about planets, and then the Greeks might have. I was wrong. The Greeks also had no fucking clue what they're talking about. So we're gonna, you know what? Once in a while, I guessed. I was like, I know Sumerians had no fucking clue because they're like, oh, they have a planet. No, they didn't know what a fucking planet was. No.
Yeah, see, and it helps because I studied astronomy in high school and growing up. So like this complex like astronomy, like looking at the planets like, in depth. You only see this stuff later in history. It's really
they
not
call
that
stuff
far back.
Planets, but what did a planet mean? This is what the word planet comes from in Greece. Go ahead and read so people can grasp that it was not a real planet.
Okay. The planetae were the 5 naked-eye planets, the classic planets, known to ancient Greek and Roman astronomers, who assigned them a variety of names, associated them with different gods, and ascribed various qualities to their apparent behavior in the sky. Some scholars included the sun and moon, making 7 planets, representing the 7 heavenly bodies that moved against the fixed background of stars. This concept survives in astrology, which is not clearly differentiated from astronomy before modern times.
Right, but you noticed that one of the names, Stella, whatever, it means wandering stars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wanderers or wandering stars. Yeah.
Right, so not really planets.
No.
Right? So once again, don't assume that because this goes back to they go, oh, well, they had advanced knowledge and it was beyond our concepts. No, they really did not. No, they were goat herders and sheep herders and agriculturists, and they had no idea about the real nature of the world. They had myths. They saw stuff and they kind of tried to interpret it, but they really had no good explanation, they had mythology. Like I told you, to me, I think atheists are wrong that they think that, religion started out of fear of like the natural world. But I think it kind of began in wonder. But what it ended up with now is closed-mindedness.
No, I agree with you there.
So go ahead and read the what I wrote.
Religion began in wonder and ended in closed-mindedness. How odd it is that at the earliest echo of religion, they, most likely, were at some point honestly trying to understand the world around them, in a deep time before understanding like science. Yet, since the earliest echo of science, this old desire for unbiased honesty of truth and belief, to understand that world, came into conflict with religious beliefs removed from reality, and then a battle for what people believe or why truly began.
Yeah, for what people believe or why they believe, in a sense, is what it truly began then. It's actually because they want to keep the religion non-reality instead of still having an earnest desire to understand the actual truth. Just like, it's no different though. They're still doing it with Graham Hancock. It's just they don't call it a religion. It's a cult of personality where they follow these pseudo, science ideas or people, more than the real truth. They don't want the real truth.
No, it reminds me of what one of these guys said. And like his name's Luke Caverns. He dresses up like Indiana Jones. He really teeters back and forth between like being friends with archaeologists and then fully embracing the pseudoscience crowd. He said it the best. It's an industry. It's a profit industry. They're not doing this stuff to find truth. They're doing this stuff to make money.
Right.
That's why you see all these accounts and YouTube videos regurgitating the same themes and formats year after year, decade after decade.
Right. But people also think there isn't evidence out there to find, and I'm trying to show, yes, there is.
She was Venus was already the city's tutelar deity. She was designated by the proto-cuneiform sign, a buckled reed pole, probably the goddess's standard. Administrative tablets indicate that Inanna received offerings in several aspects, including those personifying the morning star and the evening star, to which a great festival was dedicated.
Right, and the morning star and the evening star is really the sun. It's just the morning sun and the evening sun they thought was different than the noon sun, and sometimes even different genders. In other words, the morning star often is female, the evening star can be either male or female, and then the noon star is almost always male.
The Warka vase is probably a depiction of one of the festivals dedicated to the goddess, depicted on the vase, and of the prosperity granted to humans on the condition that they honor their gods. The religious beliefs of the 4th millennium BCE have been the object of debate. Thorkild Jacobson saw a religion focused on gods linked to the cycle of nature and fertility. The iconography of various cylinder seals and the Warka vase uses imagery of abundance, perhaps referring to the cyclical regeneration of nature and sacred marriages. It is at least possible to discern the main elements of the ideology and religious practices well known from later periods of Mesopotamian history. A divine world organized around a few main figures, represented in human form, anthropomorphism, a cult dominated by urban temples thought of as divine residences, with a cultic calendar including some major festivals, and a cultic personnel attested in proto-cuneiform lists of officials. An ideology which professes that humans have a duty to honor the gods by providing them with food, drink, and other offerings, mobilizing significant resources for this. The temples probably already had important assets such as fields, workshops, animals, and slaves. The links between Urukian Greater Mesopotamia and the southern Levant and Egypt are not part of the Uruk expansion, but they shed light on the role of local societies in the reception of Uruk culture. Influences can be seen in the visual arts of Egypt, in imported products, and also in the possible transfer of writing from Mesopotamia to Egypt, and generated deep-seated parallels in the early stages of both cultures.
Which we already kind of talked about.
The Sumerians were advanced, as well as...
Where are you reading that? No, you need Egypt architecture.
Egyptian architecture also was influenced, as it adopted various elements of earlier Mesopotamian temple and civic architecture. It is unknown if the transfer was the result of Mesopotamian builders and architects in Egypt, or if temple designs on imported Mesopotamian seals may have been a sufficient source of inspiration for Egyptian architects to manage themselves. The design of the ziggurat, which appeared in Mesopotamia in the late 5th millennium BCE, was clearly a precursor to and an influence on the Egyptian pyramids, especially the step designs of the oldest pyramids. A step pyramid, the earliest of which, Pyramid of Djoser in Saqqara, Saqqara, dates to circa 2600 BCE, well over 2,000 years younger than Mesopotamian Ziggurats step pyramids. This again strongly suggests early cultural technological influence on Egypt by Mesopotamia. The intensity of the exchanges suggests that the contacts between Egypt and Mesopotamia were often direct, rather than merely through middlemen or through trade. The Sumerians...
Which is important, right? Because then you can even more understand why the mythology sounds similar, because it's more direct. It's not somehow secondary or whatever. So it goes back to, like I told you at the beginning, that the reason why these mythologies sound similar is because culturally they move. Religion's a cultural product, and it moved in cultural migrations.
The Sumerians were advanced. As well as inventing writing, they developed early forms of mathematics, early wheeled vehicles / chariots, astronomy, astrology, written code of law, medicine, advanced agriculture and architecture, and the calendar. They created the first city-states, such as Uruk, Lagash, Isin, Kish, Umma, Eridu, Adab, Akshak, Sapur, Nippur, and Larsa, each of them ruled by an Ensi. The Sumerians remained largely dominant in the synthesized culture until the rise of the Akkadian Empire under Sargon of Akkad, circa 2335 BC, which united all of Mesopotamia under one ruler and conquered areas of Anatolia, the Levant, and ancient Iran. There was increasing syncretism between the Sumerian and Akkadian cultures and deities, with the Akkadian speakers typically preferring to worship fewer deities, but elevating them to greater positions of power. Mesopotamian religion was polytheistic, thereby accepting the existence of many different deities, both male and female, though it was also henotheistic, with certain gods being viewed as superior to others by their specific devotees. These devotees were often from a particular city or city-state that held that deity as its tutelar deity. For instance, Enki was often associated with the city of Eridu in Sumer, Assur with Assur in Assyria, Enlil with the Sumerian city of Nippur, Ishtar with the Assyrian city of Arbela, and the god Marduk with Babylon. Though the full number of gods and goddesses found in Mesopotamia is not known, K. Talgvist, in his Akkadisk Götter Pithata in 1938, counted around 2,400 that scholars know, most of which had Sumerian names. In the Sumerian language, the gods were referred to as Dingir, while in
which relates is actually to a star. It's the symbol. It's the star of Iana, so that they have a star of Ishtar.
Okay.
And I'm going to go right now to that, so you understand, because I know people don't know what that is. I say things and like, what the hell? It's the star of Ishtar, because it is important, because all deities then get, in a sense, labeled this original. And by the way, it's like 6,000-year-old symbol. Just so you know, too. It was found in the Judean or the Jordan Desert, the 6,000-year-old symbol of the six-pointed star.
Star of Ishtar. The Star of Ishtar, or Star of Inanna, is a Mesopotamian symbol of the ancient Sumerian goddess Inanna and her East Semitic counterpart Ishtar. The owl was also one of Ishtar's primary symbols. Ishtar is mostly associated with planet Venus, which is also known as the morning star.
Which I already told you, right? Because but it also relates here it says, during later times, that's when it came to Dinger. So it first starts, it only relates to the goddess and Venus. But in later times, it's an 8-pointed star, and it goes on cylinder seals, and it also the crescent moon, and the god Sin, and solar disk, and different deities. So it's relating more to more things. Anyways, just so you know what we're talking about, because I know, like I said, that I know a lot of stuff that they're reading. If you don't know, it's like, what? I have a whole blog on the stars and stuff, explain that, because they're actually, like I said, old. And stars also were like the horns of animals were considered stars, which I know maybe you don't know, but that's also like about 6,000, 5,000 years old. It's also friggin' old. And it's in Egypt all the way to the beliefs in Mongolia. They're thinking this in Siberian stuff. They're thinking the same things. It's not like it's limited to one area. And I'll show you a thing that shows that this is all like rock art. The ones, the three on the side, those are Egypt, and those are like little stones or metal things that have the stars. And so they're deities like goddess what nut, I think, or bat. It's a bull, it's a deity female, and it's also stars. And then it shows the Sumerian, that bull, the number 4 is a bull, and that star that's 5,000 years old in Mongolia. These ones with the deers or some sort of a elk or something, those are in the shaman beliefs of rock art that's, over in Siberia. So it just shows that all these, and then one's a moose probably also relating. So it's about all these things are relating to the sun or stars. So it's an old idea. Once again, the myth theme of that is pretty old and shared universally also, because religion is a cultural product.
In the Sumerian language, the gods were referred to as Dingir, while in the Akkadian language they were known as Ilu. And it seems that there was syncretism between the gods worshipped by the two groups, adopting one another's deities. The Mesopotamian gods bore many similarities with humans. They were anthropomorphic, having humanoid form and often acting as humans, requiring food and drink, as well as drinking alcohol and subsequently suffering the effects of drunkenness, but were thought to have a higher degree of perfection than common people. They were thought to be more powerful, all-seeing, and all-knowing, unfathomable, and, above all, immortal. One of their prominent features was terrifying brightness, Malamu, which surrounded them, producing an immediate reaction of awe and reverence among humanity. In many cases, the various deities were family relations of one another, a trait found in many other polytheistic religions.
Right, because it's a culture product.
And it moved with cultural migrations.
See, you got it.
Yeah, I'm getting it.
Well, because it, just like my statement too, which I hope that you get in your head, and everyone listening also, that cultures are varied, our understanding is often limited.
Yeah. Or like the one you just mentioned earlier, if you're going to go down rabbit holes, go ahead. Just don't eat the rabbit shit. Don't eat the rabbit shit. Each Mesopotamian city was home to a deity, and each of the prominent deities was the patron of a city, and all known temples were located in cities, though there may have been shrines in the suburbs. Temples were constructed of mud brick in the form of a ziggurat, which rose to the sky in a series of stair-step stages. Temple significance and symbolism have been the subject of much discussion, but most regard the tower as a kind of staircase or ladder for the god to descend from and ascend to the heavens, though there are signs that point towards an actual cult having been practiced in the upper temple, so the entire temple may have been regarded as an altar. Other theories treat the tower as an image of the cosmic mountain where a dying and rising god lay buried. Some temples, such as the Temple of Enki in Eridu, contained a holy tree, Kiskanu, in a sacred grove, which was the central point of various rites performed by the king, who functioned as a master gardener.
Right, and so we already talked about how the cosmic mountain or the mound of creation or the center of the world also can relate to a tree, which they're saying has a holy tree.
Mesopotamian temples were originally built to serve as dwelling places for the god, who was thought to reside and hold court on earth for the good of the city and kingdom. Before the beginning of kingship in Sumer, the city-states were theocracies, ruled by priests and other religious officials. Later, this role was supplanted by kings, but priests continued to exert great influence on Sumerian society. In early times, Sumerian temples were simple, one-room structures, sometimes built on elevated platforms. Towards the end of Sumerian civilization, these temples developed into ziggurats, tall, pyramidal structures with sanctuaries at the tops. The Sumerians believed that the universe had come into being through a series of cosmic births, such as gods. First, Namu, the primeval waters, gave birth to Ki, the earth, and An, the sky, who mated together and produced a son named Enlil. Enlil separated heaven from earth and claimed the earth as his domain. Humans were believed to have been created by Anki, or Enki, the son of the An and Ki. Heaven was reserved exclusively for deities. Meanwhile, after death, all mortals as spirits, regardless of their behavior while alive, were believed to go to Kur, a cold, dark cavern deep beneath the earth, which was ruled by the goddess Ereshkigal, and where the only food available was dry dust. In later times, Ereshkigal was believed to rule alongside her husband Nergal, the god of death. The major deities...
But also that Kur, that place in the underworld, also has a mountain temple something goddess inside of it. So it's still about mountains and temples.
Yeah, even in the underworld. Kur is a word for the Sumerian underworld, which means earth, sand, ground, and sometimes mountain. The cuneiform sign for Kur was like 3 triangles, 2 on top,
Yeah.
one beneath them in the center.
Correct.
A pictograph of a mountain. In the Sumerian underworld, it was initially believed that there was no final judgment of the deceased, and that the dead were neither punished nor rewarded for their deeds in life.
Right, which definitely is a little different than the Bible. And so
Oh, yeah.
here's a thing that explains that symbol and why it's 3. See, do you see why it's 3? Because the
Yeah,
3
it's like-
is the 2 mountains, hills of the mound of creation or the cosmic mountain, and the third thing is the sun.
The sun, yeah.
So the 3, the Holy Trinity.
Yeah, there we go.
And you see how the one side is Mesopotamia and then the other side is Egypt. And of course, they're totally different. I mean, no influence at all.
No. Oh.
Right. Go real quick down here. There's some more stuff, but we're not going to go through all this because I want to get close to being done. So here's a picture showing the mountains that I already showed you. This right here shows how, this is in Egypt, how it started from like a little dirt mound with rocks around it till then a little one with a box in it, then a little bit bigger box and a little bit bigger, and then almost like a little pyramid, then a little pyramid with the thing box down below. And then this one shows they stacked 3 little pyramids inside of the step pyramid, and then they built a little bit bigger little pyramid, and then they built the bigger pyramid, which so it's like several different things going on, and not just that they were taught how to build pyramids all at once, and that's why that there's multiple evidence of building and building and building until they finally made the first step pyramid in it, the pyramid itself, and then later they made pyramids, which I already showed the thing too. And then the Ziggurats are mountains of the god, and the Egyptians, which we kind of already addressed a little bit, but I wanted to go down here too, because in the mountain motifs, like the sun boat and stuff, it says the sun and the moon and their daily and nightly underground and lay beyond the horizon behind the mountain. So there's a lot of this stuff. We'll go ahead and read more the next time, but I just wanted to show you. And then the first rays, the trees on the mountain, and a lot of this different stuff. Anyway, so and then the Sumerian Genesis also released the mountains. We're not going to read all this right now, but also then the DNA. See, the DNA, ancient DNA shows genetic link between who?
Mesopotamia and Egypt. Oh, so imagine that. So it's not just genetics. It's not just traders.
Right. And how
alongside all that, it's
look at it. It says between
4,495 and 4,880 years ago.
Right. Long time ago.
Yeah.
But there actually is stuff we already know before that, but this just one more thing to back up that there's interaction. And then the genetic history of of Egypt, which, like I said, next time we'll do a little bit more. But see, it has EB1, which could be African, but it has other DNA in it too. It doesn't have just that. See, it has haplogroup J.
Oh yeah, there's a whole bunch. Yeah, a wide range of mtDNA haplogroups was found, including clades of J, U, H, HV, M.
Right. So
yeah, a whole bunch.
In Africa, L would have been, and maybe possibly N, but probably not, and possibly M. So, but all these other ones are outside. These are Europeans or whatever coming in. Middle East. This is none of these, but L for sure is the original Africa. Everything else is version coming back. Possible M and N maybe, because they left really like 50,000 years ago. But it's also possible that those are from back migrations. But everything else that is literally not from Africa. So a lot, right? They have tons of females from not Africa. And then, like I said, they try to say the African men. Okay, they have E, so it's not wrong to say there is some, right? But they have J, which is from the Cossack Mountains and the Middle East, right? So, and they already did a study and figure out that there is DNA that we already talked about, which I'm not going to go read all this stuff, but there's different mummies that they've found too. And like, see here, U5, that's from Europe, and then RB1, which is from Europe, and another RB1, and this has to do with, see, Tutankhamun and the mummies. Yeah. So it's just, there's a lot of different, see, it says AtHope III is RB1 and has H2, so both of those are European. And then this one has RB1 and K, Europeans, both male and female, European, both female, male. And see, this one has G, which is from the Middle East, so Middle East and and, K, which is not African. I'm just saying, but we already talked about that this is, we could read more of this, but see, there's E again, and there's L. L is definitely African, female, but they also have RB1, like I said, which is not from Eastern Europe. It's not, so
this is just getting into the nitty gritty, showing it's not isolated. It's like a melting pot.
It's a melting pot. We already talked about a melting pot of ideas, and certainly, and it says it comes from the Fertile Crescent, specifically Mesopotamia. Yeah. It says right here, findings suggest cultural, expansions from the Mesopotamian region that affecting both Antnola for Turkey and Egypt during this period. Yeah, we already get it. So I'm just trying to show you that if you look at here, see, it says that the ones they found was E, which is African, J, which is Middle East and Cossack Mountains, G, which is Middle East and Cossack Mountains, T, which is Middle East and Cossack Mountains or Middle East, and then R, which goes all the way to Siberia, but is European generally thought of. So I mean, like I told you, and it went to the Middle East also. But too many people try to say it's only African, and somehow that's because I know that there's people that say that they just want to make it so it's not African. It isn't just that. That's not people trying to make it that way. That's a fact.
Yeah.
The religious ideas, are not. The DNA is not just African. Both on male and female side. So it's not like just a one-off. Like you said. And it's not just even one, it's not like it's all African and just one European. They have European and they have not just one Middle East. They have several. They have G, they have T, they have R, they have J, they have multiple. And that's not even counting the ones later that are for, modern Egyptians, which also have a bunch. My point is, like which I already showed you, the ideas, the technology, and all this stuff is coming in. And so did religion. And like I said, that's why I try to simplify it also, as you know, religion is a cultural product and moved in cultural migrations. Because that literally is the explanation. They go, well, give me the simple explanation. That is the simple explanation right there.
That's your nutshell explanation right there.
Nutshell. Why don't I believe this? Why am I an atheist? Because I know what religion is. Well, what's religion? A cultural product that moved in cultural migrations. There's no reason to see it as truth. Like, oh, well, they knew stuff. They didn't even know a planet wasn't a star. No. They did not know and have some technology that we don't know today. Wrong.
No.
Or maybe that's just Damien's opinion from the facts. Maybe you look at those facts and you see them differently. You're entitled to your interpretation of the facts, but I don't know. The facts seem to support how I see it.
Yeah.
Unlike the Grant Hancock model of there's no evidence that archaeologists have ever found that support his idea. Who are we going to believe? Damien or that? I don't know.
Yeah, Damien, Damien, he seems like the more rational choice. Way more rational choice.
Evidence as opposed to no evidence.
Yeah, it's a pretty cut and dry comparison between Grant Hancock and Damien.
Yeah. How he's famous, I just don't understand. Because any rational person should start to go, yeah, he's literally just lying to you. He's telling you stories.
Well, that's
why would you want that? And it's not even true stories. I mean, yeah, maybe he's just more exciting than me. I don't know. But that shouldn't be also how you gauge what's truth, even if you felt that was the truth or some fact that I'm not as exciting as Graham Hancock's stories. Well, yeah. And I also think it's funny where someone you just like to follow the archaeologists. I say a lot of things archaeologists don't feel super comfortable with. That doesn't mean they say I'm wrong. And I'm also not. But
like even with me, with in my little corner of the universe with North America and the old copper complex, most previous researchers like Warren Whitry back in the 1950s, he was way ahead of his time by even suggesting that a society that far back, especially in North America, could have Bronze Age dynamics, like with caching, like artifacts. And like even me, like I'm still kind of hesitant to even suggest that this society could have had like like Eurasian or Middle Eastern style chalcolithic logistics. Because I know like we had talked about specialization. Like if you haven't even considered that idea before and you hear somebody mention it for the first time, you're going to be like, whoa, oh, what are you doing? Like, like, we already know these people are like small scale egalitarian. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, correct.
So
right, and so that's why though. But I think that me showing you the stuff that I understand, I think it helps you feel more confident and give more of an architecture of design to put towards that you can at least point back, go, yeah, well, what about this? Yeah. What about this? How about this?
Yeah, because history it's not case closed. You know, there's still a lot we're learning. There's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Or like you've done a lot of work putting this stuff together, and still archaeologists are still excavating sites. Historians are still synthesizing new material, putting out regional syntheses.
Right.
And so, yeah, there's still room for new ideas to enter the field.
Absolutely. And I do appreciate you, doing this with me. And I know that a lot of this stuff is new to you, but I think that it's in the long run, it's going to be very beneficial to your understanding, even in the area that you focus on.
Oh, I think so too. I really think so.
So that good.
Yeah, like even today, just talking about like these different religions in Chalcolithic societies in the Middle East and the trade relations. I found bits and pieces there that like really mesh well with what I've been researching for North America.
Right, that's great.
Yeah,
and I told you I do see this similar. That's why I said it's kind of hard when I know all these other things, and I look at that. I'm like, what do you talk about? That looks like exactly like what I already know. Like, are you sure? Because yeah. So and then also, like I said, I know when they try to say, oh well, this is that way. Hunter gatherers are always equalitarian. I'm like, no, they're not.
No.
Chieftains are always non-equalitarian. I'm like, well, that's not exactly true either.
Or like the one that you had recently learned about, like the wealth leaders.
Wealth leaders.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's a lot of variation with chieftain societies.
Right. So it's important, right? Because they don't even call them chieftains. But what else are we supposed to you might as well give them some new name. They call it wealth leaders. I mean, yeah. And how they're organizing their thing, it's still doing like a big man, which they don't call it, and not calling it a chieftain. But it's still not equalitarian, when yet it's still equalitarian. So sort of.
Well, there's a lot of nuance.
Well, that's what I said. We're going to do one on just that, because I really feel that it's beneficial. People need to expand their understanding that culture is varied and that our understanding is the limited part. And so I don't think we need to get rid of terms. We need to broaden them to mean more things that they can mean. Just like I was showing you, we call everything a pyramid, but it's all these different structures and shapes and sizes, and they're calling it mounds of creation, and yet they're going from a round mound to pyramid mounds, and yet they're calling it this in step mound pyramid and calling them all the same thing. And two mound mountains. It also is still the mound of creation. So that shows me it's really us that is trying to limit. The concept was varied, even for them. They're agreeing, yeah, it's varied. Yeah, it means that. Oh, yeah, it means that too. Oh, it also means this. Oh, it also can mean this. And you're like, seriously? You're like, yeah. So that's the same thing I'm trying to say, is that I think that it is meaning what we think it means, because the concept is not limited.
No.
So that's how I see it. And everyone's entitled to, their own thing. But I think it's important, if you're going to have ideas, to support them with facts like I have.
Yeah,
or certainly make reasoned arguments. So
yeah, it's better than just pulling stuff out of nowhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Or just sticking to, well, I was told one time at 09, so I'm never going to, change my thinking again. Mm. Really, that's not scientific either.
No.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, it was great talking to you, and go ahead and tell us where to find you, and then we'll go ahead and end it.
Okay, you can find me on academia.edu at Dylan Violet. You can find me on Facebook at Dylan Violet. That's my personal account. I post on the Old Copper Complex and Ancient Waterways America Facebook group, and also the Musquabic Facebook. You can find me on X at Copper Violet, and you can also find me on Reddit at Copper Violet. And most recently, I created a Blue Sky account. I haven't started posting there yet, but I will soon. You can find me there at Copper Violet also.
Right, great. Sounds good. good. People should definitely follow you. You have good ideas and post good stuff. I like it. You're a good thinker.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. And so anyways, next time we're going to go back and do the other stuff about the Florida and its Native Americans, and then explain slavery with Native Americans, and explain the Trail of Tears and a little bit, and the Black Seminoles, and finish that second video. And then after that, then we'll do the second video to this, where we talk even more about the mountains and the mounds and the temples and all that stuff. And then after that, then our next thing will be to do the nakedness video that explains why that's not primitive. And then we'll go and finish another, video for the basic, 20 video series. That's what this is part of, is my 20 video series. You came in when I'd already done several videos. I think you started at number 16 or something. So that's also why I know it's hard to catch up, because I did start like more at the foundations. If you watch all the videos, everything I'm saying isn't so out of, unfamiliarity, because you would have been more familiar as it builds. But that's fine. I always try to do all the videos like I assume that people listening don't know any, because I think that's a better way to teach than to assume that you can just talk about terms and things and whatever and assume everyone knows everything. That's a good way to lose.
Yeah, especially if they're just like researching a specific topic, like of what we talked about today. It's a good idea to flush out these terms in case they really don't know.
Right, and so and it's beneficial. Sometimes people think they already know, they learned a long time ago, but it's good to hear it again and go, oh, okay. And then also to show where they can go and research on their own. This is not something beyond that. I also try to do that because I feel like it's not just that I've done so much and it's so hard to do. If you really, like you said, research what I'm saying or follow what I'm saying and the links that are given in the blog or the terms, go do it yourself, you'll come up with the same stuff. It's not like, it's hidden.
No.
So, no, it's actually no. All right. Well, everybody, take care and see you next time.
All right. See you later, everybody.
Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Damien Marie AtHope. In the simplest terms, I am an atheist-humanist philosopher and prehistorical writer-researcher at DamienMarieAtHope.com. I am specifically an axiological atheist. An axiological atheism can be thought to involve ethical and value theory reasoned and moral argument driven apatheism, agnosticism, atheism, anti-theism, anti-religionism, secularism, and humanism. Axiological atheists can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. As an axiological atheism's ethically reasoned and constructive pro-humanity, I am an axiological thinker, value theorist. The science of goodness, worthiness, usefulness, valuableness, virtue, reliableness, accuracy, validity, morality, integrity, beneficialness, etc., etc. We axiologists have a value consciousness. And in general, we see the architecture of humanistic humanitarianism value in people that we see as dignity beings. Places and things are not. Axiology is a value theory. In its broadest sense, it involves areas of philosophy that are deemed to encompass some evaluative or evaluation aspect. Therefore, it crosses almost all domains in some way or another. Now for a more detailed terms as to what I am. I am an axiological atheist, an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, secularist, humanist, rationalist, writer, artist, poet, philosopher, advocate, activist with schooling in psychology, sociology, as well as I am an autodidact, self-taught in science, archaeology, anthropology, and philosophy. I promote science and am against pseudoscience, pseudohistory, pseudomorality, things that are found in religion.